we are Novels Hall Dynasty. If you want to listen to more novels or more chapters of this novel, visit a path with the name of Novels Hall Dynasty. We continue with the novel. Seized by the System. Part 1. Chapter 1, I've been seized by the system. The Kixie Festival 1 happened on a summer night. In the western sky, a shooting star blazed a blood-red arc across the heavens, sending the numerous couples beneath who held spectacle to its descent into bouts of enthusiastic prayer and wish-making. Meanwhile, Fanning, as single as a dollar, couldn't care less. He was curled up in his small, rented room, tapping endlessly on his keyboard, completely disconnected to what was happening outside. However, a pop-up from an annoying website would soon appear in the bottom right corner of his screen, bringing news of the outside world into his bubble of safety. The interest in his games diminished soon after. Shocking. Fire meteor from the sky. Men went quiet while women cried when they knew the reason. Offhandedly, he clicked the news open and read it with pursed lips. It was another ordinary meteor sighting. The only thing that made it interesting was the author's pathetic approach to creating such a cheap title. The comments, however, were as entertaining as usual. See, the fire meteor is here. Seriously, whose life hack is here? Come collect your parcel quick. Greetings, fellow cultivators. I, the master, am just dropping by the earth to rest after I failed some of God's tests. Amused, Fanning joined in the fun. Stop this bickering, he typed. This was obviously a sign of the activation of my system that had been lying dormant for 28 years already. Just as the comment was posted, he suddenly felt the ground beneath him rumble and quake. The shaking caused him to lose his footing and he tripped over himself headfirst into his desk. A sharp pain shot up his forehead, and strings of blood splattered all over his RMB 3000 laptop. Fuck. Fanning cursed instinctively at the sight of smoke rising in the air as his vision blurred, replaced by the black curtain of his eyelids closing as he passed out. When Fanning was lost to the world, some interesting comments popped up on the internet. Somehow I started vomiting water. What should I do? How do I disguise myself so I look normal? What a coincidence, I started breathing fire too. Let's go and rescue grandfather now. No problem. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. Holy hell, what's this? Let me tell you something scary, I saw a ghost. I swear I'm serious, if I'm lying, I'll see a ghost. However, these comments soon disappeared from the site, as if they never existed in the first place. Fanning felt like he had been dreaming for a very, very long time. He dreamt of obtaining a life hack, where he got himself a system. Since then, he had conquered all 4 continents and walked to the pinnacle of humanity. When he finally came to, he opened his eyes to find that the blood on his laptop had somehow disappeared, and his forehead no longer caused him pain. He sighed, sadly, that was just a dream. I should really check if my laptop is ruined. He wheeled his hands to move for his laptop. However, he was suddenly doused in mind-numbing panic. His eyes shot open, wide as saucers. What the fuck? Fanning suddenly realized that he had lost all control of his limbs. His hands weren't moving. More accurately, not a single part of his body was moving to his commands. Okay, I must be dreaming. I'm somehow still asleep, and all of this is just a dream. Fanning kept his composure. He was convinced that he was still in his dream. Yes, that must be it. This was a lucid dream, nothing more. However, a sound suddenly echoed in his head, and realization hit him like a train at full speed. System activating. Wait, I'm getting my own system now. Fanning was overwhelmed by great elation. This was definitely not a dream, he happily thought, before his face darkened like coal the next second. Discovered the host's untreatable, chronic terminal disease. Synthesizing solutions, what? Untreatable illness? I attend all my annual checkups, why don't I know this? Fanning shuddered in shock after he heard the system's notification. He suddenly recalled all the different illnesses that he came upon previously, their ominous names flashing in his mind. Terminal disease analysis completed. Stage 4 severe procrastination, confirmed to be untreatable. For the system's survival, commence immediate takeover of the host. What? My body is being seized by the system. Fang Ning was very confused by the current proceedings. He knew that he was quite a lazy person. He would never go for a haircut before his hair reached his chin, and he would only do the laundry when he ran out of clean clothes to wear. Even so, he threw his socks, underwear, jackets, and everything else together into the washing machine. This isn't just quite lazy. Fang Ning heard the system conversing with him. It's extreme laziness, he argued with all his might. How is this extreme? I haven't even made the internet news sites yet. You're quite a handsome guy, but you've been a bachelor since forever. Don't you have some sort of fucking sense? But this shouldn't justify you snatching the autonomy of my body. I've used this body for 20 years. Fang Ning suffered a critical hit from the system, throwing his brain into shambles. After he conversed with the system, Fang Ning once again used all his might to raise his hand, but to no avail. He soon realized that aside from thinking, hearing and seeing, he could not control anything else. There was no other way for him to prove that he was in control of himself aside from his brain. At this very moment, another sound was heard from within his mind. His final verdict was announced. Complete takeover sequence activated. System thinking processes initiated. The system is processing. The system is processing. Processing my ass. Return me my body, you bastard. You're a life hack, for God's sake, just be a good support that lives up to the holy name of the task. Stop trying to stage a coup, Fang Ning bellowed internally. He really wanted to scream out loud, but unfortunately, he no longer had control over his voice box. The system did not pay him any mind. A minute later, Fang Ning witnessed his body quickly cleaning up the instant noodle packaging and fruit peels that littered the table. His body, cleaning, seized by the system's whims. Fuck, is this system actually planning to spring clean the place? Fang Ning muttered to himself. Right on cue, a system notification showed up. The system is cleaning its habitat. Fang Ning watched the system sort all the trash in the room in one corner with his body. In the pile were takeouts, parcel packaging, and the socks he had not washed for a month. After the trash was cleaned, the system used his hand to pinch his nose as he retrieved a stack of plastic bags from under his mattress, his movements practiced and methodical. Wait. I don't even remember I had plastic bags stored up in here. Does the system have X-ray eyes or something? Fang Ning observed, but he did not see any X-ray scenes in his vision. Then, another scarier thought doused him in icy cold water. Did the system go through all of his memories? Just as Fang Ning was freaking out by himself, the system had skillfully placed all of the trash into the plastic bag. What embarrassed Fang Ning the most was the fact that the rubbish that he never really took notice to had actually accumulated to as many as 6 to 7 bags. Then, he saw his body push the door to his room open before walking down the stairs. He took repeated trips until he managed to throw everything into the rubbish bin. What's more, the system even commanded his body to clean the common area, living room, toilet, balcony, and every corner of the rented house. Well, this is a rare occurrence. When the system controlled his now smelly body to shower, a girl emerged from the room beside his. This beautiful girl said in surprise when she opened the door to a sweaty Fang Ning and clean floors. She had come out due to the commotion and soon realized what happened. Fang Ning wanted to turn his head to look when he heard a melodious female voice talking about him. However, his head stayed still, and he was once again reminded that his body was now seized by the system. Fang Ning never knew what it felt like to not be able to control his own body, but now he finally understood. Now, he finally knew how the paralyzed people felt, how horrifying and suffering it was, and how pitiful they were. Before that, he was just an ordinary person, but he was suddenly given a system. However, he had lost his body before he could even see the first rays of the pinnacle of humanity that he thought he would achieve. What kind of fuckery is this? He furiously shouted in his mind, and he felt like he was losing his future to the darkness. What use would a powerful life hack be if he lost the autonomy of his being? If he could no longer enjoy the result of his life hack, how different was he from being an actual rock? Everyone wanted to be immortal, But if the price to pay was that they must become a rock for eternity, probably no one would be willing to follow through their choice. Even if there were some that did, none of them would probably be able to last 100 years without beginning to regret their choice. Thankfully, Fang Ning soon realized that his situation seemed to be slightly better than that of being a rock. A notification ping once again echoed in his brain. An NPC is attempting to establish conversation with the host. Please choose from the dialogue options below, NPC Zhao Ying said to you in surprise. Well, this is a rare occurrence. Your reply. 1. You smirk devilishly. How rare exactly? 2. You answer with disdain. None of your business. 3. You coldly give the other party a once-over before leaving. You do not answer. Fuck me. The first option was something so idiotic that only a main character of a novel could do. The second was to piss someone off without any reason, and the third was the only normal one. However, he had no idea how to look at someone coldly. Still, he loudly proclaimed in his choice while he was busy complaining in his mind. I choose option 3. Fang Ning was afraid that if he were slow in his choice, the system might misunderstand him to be someone so lazy that he could not be bothered about his own fate, which would lead to the abolishment of the dialogue option system for good. Zhao Ying had never thought that the novels of old would be true, that there really was someone on Earth that could have such cold eyes. This man that she almost never talked to merely turned to give her a once-over, freezing her down to her bones in the process. Even though it was summer, there was probably no need for her to turn on the air conditioning later in the night anymore. And her first reaction to that was to take a photo using her smartphone, which she posted on Weibo, as if no one was actually present beside her. Let me show you what it actually means to have a gaze as cold as ice. As was default due to the system's option, Fang Ning turned to leave the scene right after the show once over. He had no idea what this pretty housemate of his did or would do after she took that picture of him. After all, the system did not provide him with a 360-degree overarching view of his surroundings. There was no way for him to know what she did with the photo. The system, on the other hand, did not continue the interaction with the NPC either. Instead, it went to shower. Chapter 2, The system is fighting for justice. Even after returning to the room after the shower, the system continued its relentless assault. Initial habitat optimization complete. Survival health indexes increased slightly. The system is processing the next course of action. The system is processing. The system is processing. The system is processing. The system has decided on a night jog. What the fuck? You know what? You've got me there. After the system gave him dialogue options, Fang Ning was still wondering if everything would function just like a game, where his body would return after he arrived at a certain cutscene. Sadly, that was not the case. He could only stare as his own body slid into a set of exercise clothing and put the pair of high-quality counterfeit Nike shoes he had gotten from Teo Bayo with a movement of practice eased, before leaving his room. As he left the house, he bumped into his housemate again, who now had makeup delicately dabbed over her features. She was prettier than she usually was, but for whatever reason, she was wearing something too thick for a warm night like this. She had foregone her usual choice of outfit, stockings, mini-skirts, and spaghetti straps, for a pair of long jeans and a pink sweater. Zhao Ying reflected the look of surprise on her face as well. What was the cold-eyed boy up now, when it was already this late outside? She was all dressed up to meet a rich online friend that she had been talking, catfishing, to for a long time. It was Kixi Festival, after all. What could a bachelor be doing out of the house? She understood after she went downstairs. That bachelor had went jogging. What a poor child, seeking release through jogging. He actually looks quite handsome after he tidies himself up. Never really noticed that before. How could he still not have himself a girlfriend? Zhao Ying pouted, sighing in pity before hailing a cab. Fang Ning observed as the system commanded his body through the workout. As a spectator, he had experienced a very boring half-hour. After the jogging had finally ended, he heard another new system notification. Physical energy declining to fatigue levels. Resting recommended. The system has decided to rest. His body then started to walk around slowly. Fang Ning thought to himself, great, you're resting now, time to return the body to its owner. Yeah, sadly, he still couldn't lift even his little finger. Another 10 minutes passed before a new system notification chimed in. Physical energy recovered, physical health increased slightly. The system is processing the next course of action, the system is processing, the system is processing, the system decides to fight for justice. Wait. System, oh sir system, what did you just say? Fang Ning was rendered speechless by what he had just heard. This system came here and snatched his body without even a brief introduction, and now he realized that this system might even have an inclination towards martial arts. Why else would it suddenly decide to fight for justice? Well, the good thing was that judging from the signs he caught from the system, he might not be forced to do things that went against his moral compass. The bad thing, however, was that aside from the main character, heroes usually ended up dying much quicker than the average caliphate. Still, the system did not offer him any sort of explanation. It was as if it already had a clear destination in mind as it walked determinedly towards a particular location. Even Fang Ning was confused after the 18th turn it made on the complicated route it took. While the system was walking, Fang Ning, who read too many novels that reminded him of the different ways of how heroes could die, was hit with a thought that made him shake in fear. Wait, system? Sir system? I can't stop you from your mission to fight for justice, but please, at least put on a disguise. We're no longer in the past, and surveillance is set up everywhere. I don't want to become famous after just one night. The first rule of having a life hack in a novel is to be as inconspicuous as possible. The famous die really quickly. Fang Ning yelled in his mind. Although the system did not take notice of his previous complaints, Fang Ning was still hopeful as he provided the system with his input. No matter what, the system had indeed given him those dialogue options, even if they were for a simple interaction that he had had with Zhao Ying a few minutes ago. Thus, it was obvious that at least in some aspects, the system's intelligence was not sufficient, it required help from the host. Fang Ning was absolutely delighted when his thoughts were confirmed. This was the first time the system gave a reaction to his comments. The host has provided relevant input. The system is processing, so this system might still listen. Fang Ning finally found out some secrets about his captor. For some reason, the system's ultimate goal was to survive. However, survival and fight for justice were two contradicting goals that could not be reconciled. Thankfully, that was not something that he would worry about right now. At this moment, Fang Ning was elated that he had finally found some sort of light in the darkness that was his future. Since the system was open to his ideas, there was still some hope that he would eventually be the owner of his body. However, he soon realized that he was just dreaming. The system has decided to put on a disguise. Current Art of Disguise Level 1. A notification was visible in his mind. At present, there were no mirrors around for Fang Ning to know what he looked like. However, he could clearly feel his height increasing. It was obvious when he stood in comparison to his surroundings. This system was really magical. Besides changing his appearance, it even increased his height. Fang Ning started as he transformed from a 168 cm lowlife to a 180 cm dream guy. He couldn't help but to be delighted by this. If he regained ownership of his body in the future, he would be able to change anything he wanted, right? Disguise completed. The system has decided to fight for justice. Fang Ning snapped out of his daydreams. He decided to not bother this stupid system for a while, and become a real passive observer. He wanted to see how it wanted to fight for justice, with the pretense that it did not ruin his body. The system gave him a surprise right after that. After the disguise was complete, the system commanded his body to turn and walk into a street. There were no street lights on the road, and there were only a few rays of light in the night. It was incredibly dark, but Fang Ning found out that his eyesight was outstanding. So good that he could clearly see that a few hundred meters away from them, a slim woman was using her bag to hit a fat man. Hey, what are you doing? We've just met for the first time, keep your hands to yourself. What I'm doing? Why, getting us a hotel room, of course. Why else do internet friends meet? I even took the train to meet you. Why don't you pay for my train ticket?" The fat man's smile was filthy as he forcefully took the woman in his arms. Fang Ning studied the situation. That woman. Wasn't she his housemate? She's that pretty housemate that he met twice just now who had left quite an impression on him. The man's face looked absolutely revolting. Such a pretty girl, despite living in such close proximity to her, Fang Ning had not managed to talk to her much, nor did he manage to catch her name even after such a long time. Yet somehow, she was close enough to this fatty that they scheduled an offline meet. If this fatty did not have a face like his and was actually fairly good-looking, both of them would probably be in a hotel room by now. No. Just as Fang Ning sank into his routine daydreaming, he suddenly realized that his mouth was moving. Stop. How could you forcefully abduct a woman in broad daylight? Have you no shame? Fang Ning never knew that he had such a magnetic and dignified voice fitting of the most respectable man. Then, he realized, shit, that was the default voice effect. But wait, why did he not receive any dialogue options? If he had, he would have never said that line. The city was enveloped in a night so dark that the moon was difficult to find. How could it be broad daylight? His awkward fuse was triggered so badly. The fat man was stunned silent too. Was an actual human being this nonsensical? His gaze caught up with him before he burst into laughter. Fang Ning's height was comparable to his inner fight, but that body size was leagues away. Fang Ning was too skinny, and he stood there like a bamboo stick that would fall from the slightest breeze. Of course, he did not know that this was the effect from Fang Ning's previous transformation. It was natural for him to look skinny after he grew almost 20 centimeters taller while maintaining his original weight. This system was still bound by certain scientific principles. Unlike Detective Conan, the system could not ignore the law of conservation of mass. It could not enlarge or shrink at will. He could only become thinner after he became taller if there was no change in his weight. Very, very thin. Go mind your own business, you bamboo stick. This is my girlfriend, and what happens between us has nothing to do with you. We can go anywhere we want tonight. I'll have you know that you won't be the first person I murder. As the words left his mouth, a fruit knife appeared in his hand and was thrust in Fang Ning's direction, a sinister expression overcoming his face. Fang Ning paled, and his brain pulled up a blank. He wanted to dodge, wanted to turn and run as fast as he could, but he realized that he still could not control his body. Did that mean that he would die like this, thanks to this life hack called the system? However, it only took him another second to realize how foolish his fears were, and how powerful the system was for him to rely on. In his eyes, his body moved to the commands of the system, and dodged quickly to the left and right. It was so quick that an ordinary person would never see it with his eyes. Then, he nonchalantly hit the man's chest with his palm. The next thing Fang Ning saw was how the sinister face froze, how the fat man moved his hand to press against his chest, and how he then collapsed slowly to the ground, his eyes still wide in disbelief. The man was the epitome of not dying in peace. Fang Ning was stunned. System, this was too goddamn ruthless. This was basically how ancient heroes behaved, where they would kill indiscriminately when injustice unfolded before them. Even Lo Tiksha wasn't as swift as he was when he punched Zhen Guangxi. Lo Tiksha punched Zhen Guangxi 3 times before the latter was done, but the system only needed a palm attack. 1. This life hack is amazing. It was then when he saw the system notification that appeared in his mind. Chapter 3, The system is looting. The system has encountered a fugitive, Wang Hong. The system has deployed Skip Punch 1. Wang Hong did not channel his vital energy as defense. Critical hit. Defense is breached. Wang Hong suffered 225 damage, DMG. Wang Hong is dead. The system gained 100 experience points, EXP. The system is 4 points away from the next level, okay. He had actually killed someone now. Fang Ning was oddly serene when he saw the notification. Nothing seemed to be out of the norm, and he was quite curious when he found himself totally free from the typical first blood syndrome. He did not feel nauseous, and was nowhere close to vomiting. After some pondering, he blamed the detachment on the system. He was no more than an observer when all of this happened, just like how a pedestrian would witness an accident. The latter case was bloodier than this one, and most of the bystanders did not even flinch when they were gossiping. That would explain why the crowd usually flocked to car accident scenes. Furthermore, Fang Ning felt that this sense of detachment might be good for the current situation. Presently, he would have never been able to kill someone even if he was asked to, and his movements would never be as clean and crisp as this. He would probably be able to use 30% of the ability the system had. He would probably be in a lot of danger if he were actually facing a crisis. He was unaffected by the death of Wang Hong, and he soon rationalized that was entirely normal. However, he was very surprised when he saw that the housemate the system has saved, the only victim of this incident, seemed to be even more unfazed than he when the fat man collapsed before her. The girl now had her phone aimed at the fat man, the flashes going off. Then, her camera moved to aim at Fang Ning. Fang Ning realized that she was taking photos when the camera flashed in his face. The girl then proceeded to swipe away on her phone, her head bowed and her eyes fixated on the screen. She paid little to no attention to the scene around her. With his impeccable eyesight and above-average height, Fang Ning could peek at the girl's screen. He was shocked beyond measure when he read that this woman was posting a Weibo status right beside a dead body. Then, another mind-blowing event occurred before him. The system controlled his body and walked towards the fat man's body, as if no one else were present at the scene. Then, his hands ran all over the dead body. "Put on gloves, don't leave any prints behind." Fang Ning managed to remind the system in short notice. Once again, the system listened to his input. Fang Ning only managed to register a blur in his vision before two plastic bags were wrapped around his hands. These were probably the ones that he stuffed into his pocket when he was cleaning his room. After that, he witnessed the system once again controlling his body to run his hands over the fat man's body. When he finally saw the system notifications, Fang Ning suddenly cried, very much touched by the system's actions. He understood the system's intention now. If the prime directive for the system's operation was survival, why did it not sleep and rest after the tiring cleaning routine, instead choosing to go out to such a far place to fight for justice? The system has utilized Dragon's cloud searching claw to search the body of the fugitive, Wang Hong. The system has found RMB 4,250, 1 iPhone 7, 2 debit cards, 1 gold necklace, 1 gold ring. Oh, system, you must have known from my memory that I only have RMB 850 left in my debit card. You somehow also knew that my rent was due the day after tomorrow, but my salary will only be out the day after. Fang Ning was lost for words. This whole thing about being seized by the system was not without its perks. At least, this was the first time since he was born that someone actually cared if he had enough money to get by, and the first time that someone wanted to give him money to spend. Due to a certain very important reason, he did not have much savings, even though he had started working early as an adult and had a decent salary. He would always have a few days in the month when he would struggle financially. After the system ran its hands all over the body, Fang Ning found himself to be presented with another set of options from the system. The system has saved a weak woman from the fugitive Wang Hong. The woman seems to be traumatized into shock. You approach her to offer some comfort. Come on, system, I know what you're thinking. You are not there to offer her comfort, but to get some compensation for your services. But you're wrong, she's not in shock. She's just neck-deep in the internet. Fang Ning could almost see what options would appear. He saw his body move closer to the woman, and finally, 3 system options appeared in his mind. Option 1, you gently comfort her. Everything's fine now, miss. Do you want me to send you home? Where do you live? Option 2, you pat the numb fellow and chuckle. Saving a person's life is worth a fortune. How much do you think you're worth? Option 3, you walk to her, give her a once-over, and feel very disappointed when you realize that she was still playing with her phone and ignoring her savior. Then, you turn to leave the scene. Alright, Fang Ning's theory was proven. 2 out of the 3 options provided were asking for compensation. Even if Fang Ning did not want the system to work for free, safety should still be the first priority. After all, they had just killed a person. Instead of fleeing the scene after looting, the idiotic system still wanted to ask for money. The system was still lacking in the intelligence department. After Fang Ning finished muttering to himself, he chose option 3. While all of that happened, Zhao Ying, the chronic smartphone and Weibo addict, hadn't even noticed what Fang Ning was doing. The only thing she realized was that this might be a chance for her to leap to the trending tag on Weibo. Real-time snaps, pictures included as proof. An online friend wanted to molest me during our first meeting, but a passerby gorgeous man punched him unconscious. He's now lying on the ground. A post with pictures as proof that included a handsome man. The post would probably attract many people even if the trope was cheap. After all, it was cheap tropes like this that could easily amass the most traffic, since it was really difficult to witness a similar story in real life. This Weibo post of hers managed to accumulate hundreds of comments seconds after it went online, and its likes were approaching 1,000. This was entirely new to her, and it gave her an unexplainable excitement. He's a gorgeous man indeed. It's rare for a title like this to not be clickbait. @XXX @XXXX. Quick, join in the fun and let's swoon over this handsome man. Oh, he's really handsome. Would he secretly be some artist? He's too skinny though. That's the type of skinny where he looks slim with his clothes on, but when he strips them off, he'll look muscular and strong. Fang Ning used his sharp eyes to scan the women's screen and read the Weibo contents when he was close enough to her. He finally realized what she was doing. Ah, so that's why she was unaffected. She thought the fat man was just unconscious. Well, she could be blamed, really. She was neither a doctor nor a cop, and an ordinary layman would not be able to easily identify a dead body from an unconscious person, especially if said person was still very much alive a minute ago. However, Fang Ning knew that not everyone were laymen. Soon, the truth would be revealed, and the process would only be quicker due to the immense talent pool hiding in the different corners of the internet. Fortunately, the system was already turning away in disappointment after it gave the woman and her phone a once-over. It was following its chosen option to the T. Moments after Fang Ning's departure, Zhao Ying noticed an eerie twist of events on her Weibo post. OP2, you'd better start running now. Don't look back. Don't you think that the fatty on the ground seemed off? Coroner Lin Tong, yes, something is definitely off. I don't think he's experiencing shock. OP, leave the place now, we've called the police for you. The person is not unconscious, he's dead. In the photos, the man's eyes were open, but his irises were already blown wide. This is the typical eyes for a person that died with their eyes open. @XX police. A shudder went through Zhao Ying's body as she read these comments. She snapped herself back into reality, no longer deep in the trenches of her Weibo mobile app. She lowered her eyes to look at the fat man in disbelief, his body still collapsed just meters away from her. The man's face was still sinister, but he looked much scarier with his eyes wide open, his entire being unmoving as if frozen in place. He did not look alive. Fear flooded her senses, and when she scanned her surroundings, her hero was nowhere to be found. She was alone with a corpse, and when a breeze caressed her skin and shook the branches, the area morphed into a terrifying crime scene, where the shadows lurked in the dark where the lights could not reach. Someone's dead. She shrieked as she sprinted towards the brightest place she could see. Fang Ning was far away from the vicinity when he heard the shrill scream of a woman. He sighed. The woman finally realized that something was wrong only when he was already 200 meters away. She probably only found out after she read the comments from the experts online. It seemed like her lack of intelligence was on par with the system. Fang Ning paid her no mind. He focused only on his body, and after he reminded the system, it led his body to go to a secluded place to shed off its disguise. He only returned to his rented house, taking the scenic route, after he had completely reverted to his original self. By the way, this jogging speed is really fast. Fang Ning felt like he was faster than when he was riding a motorbike. Did the system use nimble steps during the run? Sadly, he did not manage to see any system notification about that matter. he took quite a long time to regain his breath after he arrived in his rented room. However, Fang Ning still could not control his body. He did manage, though, to see how he should go about things after tonight's experiences. He found out that the system would listen to his suggestions as long as they were able to increase the chances of survival for the system. If that were the case, the system might give him some sort of control over his body one day, when it felt that he might be able to survive better that way. One of Fang Ning's self-identified strengths was that Fang Ning was a die-hard optimist. Now, he once again used this strength of his to search a new way of living for himself. The system once again commanded Fang Ning's body to take a shower afterward. When Fang Ning thought that the system would finally rest and sleep, and that he could finally take control of his body, a new notification appeared. The system has decided to train in isolation. Fang Ning felt an omen breathing down his neck. The next thing he saw was the system sitting cross-legged on his bed, his palm facing the sky as if he were meditating. "All right, you win," Fang Ning grumbled. He felt a warm flow of air rise from his lower abdomen, and soon it separated itself into 4 currents. 2 of them went to the left and right of his lower body, while the other 2 went past his chest to reach the left and right of his upper body. When the warm air reached his hands and feet, it returned and flowed back to his abdomen. The cycle repeated itself over again and again. Chapter 4, Continue to Fight for Justice. This was the first time Fang Ning experienced something like this. Everything was new to him. This would be the system's meditation mantra for internal strength. Previously, no matter if he were killing fugitives or looting a corpse, the kung fu techniques he used were too fast for Fang Ning to feel anything, even if they were amazing ones. In comparison, the process of cultivating internal strength was slow and steady, like a stream of water flowing down a river. He finally had the time to slowly examine the wonders of the system. Soon, he realized that this stream of warm air within him traveled to all the nooks and crannies of his body. Well, all of him, but his brain. Would it be that the system was avoiding the brain, afraid of messing with the only place that it did not have control of? Seriously, these gusts of warm air were gushing through his veins, warming him from inside out. It was more comfortable experience than any masseurs could offer. It felt very much like a fancy hot spring, but better. After all, a good hot spring would only warm the skin, but this was down to his bone marrow. However, the curiosity only lasted for only a while. After the clock struck midnight, he was already exhausted. Fang Ning was never a night owl to begin with, and the only thing he wanted to do right now was to climb under his blankets and fall into sleep's embrace. What he did in one night has surpassed an entire month's activity, and even though he wasn't the one who was controlling his body, the exhaustion was affecting his brain. Sadly, the system took no mind about his protests. With his legs crossed, Fang Ning's body remained unmoving as a wooden statue, as if the system was ready to meditate until morning came. Fang Ning finally understood how the system was set to not waste a second of his life. Since the takeover, everything the system decided to do was productive, and it never took a rest. At this point, the thought of taking time out for leisure felt pretty much impossible. If Fang Ning was the one who was controlling the system, he would probably only use 10% of his time doing anything remotely meaningful. All things aside, he would have been fast asleep already. Sleep was much more important than cultivation, no. Fang Ning literally ran out of ideas on how to deal with the system. Even though he was furious that it took over his body without any prior notice, he could not shake a sense of embarrassment that had enveloped his being. At last, Fang Ning fell asleep in shame. Sleep was never a problem for Fang Ning. When he was a student, he could fall asleep standing while he was being punished by his teachers. Fang Ning woke up the next morning at 5 a.m., his eyes snapping open when the sky was still dark. After he got out of bed, he walked directly to the kitchen and found some seasoning. Then, he switched on the gas stove and started cooking. Soon, a scrumptious feast was laid out before him. A freshly made breakfast that was delicious and nutritious was spread on the table. The aroma was so strong that the real Fang Ning stirred awake. This is so fucking good. This taste. Even the top chef during the boss's second wedding could barely qualify to carry your shoes if you cook like this. Say, "So system, if you have skills like this, why don't you go and work as a chef? In a city like this, your monthly income would be higher than RMB 50,000 if you are willing to cook." That was not including the possible shares you can get in fancy restaurants. "Hey, why don't we start our own stall? I can guarantee that we'll be able to buy a shop within a year," Fang Ning immediately suggested after he inhaled the divine aroma from the food. The system ignored him, instead focusing on eating his breakfast slowly. Then, it kept all the leftovers in the rice cooker to keep it warm, and cleaned all of the dishes before it walked downstairs to exercise. Fang Ning was overwhelmed with shame after that. He once cooked regularly, but he stopped once takeouts became mainstream. To him, it was the cleanup that was troublesome. Wait, the ingredients that were in the kitchen probably all belonged to the girl he lived with, right? His morning workout ended 2 hours later. It wasn't even 8 a.m. when the system finished showering, and the thing that Fang Ning feared the most happened again as the system did not even consider the prospect of becoming a chef. "The system is processing, the system is processing, the system has decided to fight for justice. Oh come on, Sir System, the last round wasn't even half a day ago, you're on the road to killing your pal here. You have an easy way to earn more money than you can spend, but instead you have an avid interest in working in the shadows of the city." "Why?" Fang Ning bemoaned. The system was as diligent as the legendary one Gu Ojing, but for some reason it was way dumber than the hero. As an avid novel reader, Fang Ning understood that if the system continued with its antics this frequently, getting caught was not a matter of if, but when. Disguise would confuse the eyes of others, but it was only temporary. The risks were too high. "Wait. I still need to go to work. My pay would be deducted if I skip work." Fang Ning yelled in vain. The system ignored Fang Ning entirely. It was very skilled in the art of fighting evil after yesterday's events. It deemed the host's suggestions to be no more than redundant bickering now. It led Fang Ning's body to a nearby public toilet to transform into the handsome look he sported before. Then, he ran towards a general direction after surveying his surroundings. What should one do after he develops a superpower? Earn lots of money, of course. It's not like you would think of rebelling in this developed society, right? And how should he earn money if he could only set himself on fire? By performing on the streets? Ho Mingli nearly broke his skin from scratching too hard while he thought. He was relatively simple-minded, as he was just barely scraping by with bricklaying and occasional thieving on the side. Still, he could not come up with a way to earn money with this whole setting yourself on fire superpower. What use would it be if he gave his superpower to the authorities? Get that RMB 500 and a red certificate? No. It was not like he could do that anyways. However, it was impossible for him to go back to moving bricks on construction sites. How did the superpowered individuals earn their keep in the movies again? Suddenly, inspiration hit him like a truck, and he decided to expand his side hustle. He arrived at a nearby parking lot. It looked absolutely ordinary with lax security, but due to the dwindling numbers of available parking lots in this city, the parking lot was still filled with quite a number of luxury cars. These cars usually have valuable items in them. Smartphones and laptops were not up to par. Instead, the occasional luxury watches and other things left in the cars were more expensive than an ordinary vehicle itself. Last time, he Mingli saw a Longines on the driver's seat of a Mercedes. The diamonds that were embedded on the watch proclaimed its custom-made status. He took a picture and went to his usual buyer for his theft stock. The purchasing price was 3,800,000 RMB. He was literally drooling over the watch, but sadly he had limited skills at the time. A lock on a luxury car was difficult to break in. The him before could only sigh longingly outside the window, but now, as he grinned devilishly at the dark red flame spouting from his hand that could easily burn a hole through a glass, he knew he could finally do something about it. His first victim was an Audi A8. He successfully burned an arm-sized hole through the glass window, and he reached into the car and grabbed an iPhone and a wallet. It was as easy as ABC. He glanced at the iPhone and tossed it with a dismissive snort. Then, he took a few hundred yen from the wallet. Everything else in it was cards, and he was very dissatisfied with that. He thought there would be at least something worth taking from the wallet. He threw the wallet somewhere behind him. Little did he know that the wallet costs at least 68,000 RMB in the stores. His second victim was a Porsche Cayenne, and he got a diamond ring that was on the passenger seat. The diamond was quite big, and even though he had no idea how many carats it was, but he felt that it was worth at least tens of thousands. His heart was literally dancing in delight. He chose a Cadillac as his third victim. She was not very astounding, but in there he found a wallet filled with money that there would be a minimum of 20,000 RMB inside it. He liked these the most, low risk, easy to use, and it didn't need to be cashed in for the middleman to earn another round from him. He stretched his arm and used all of his might, his ass very much out there as he struggled to take the wallet. He wished that he could burn the entire door down, but the superpower was relatively new to him, and it was still very weak. Glass was much easier to burn through than steel. He looked very much disheveled, but he finally got it. Ho Mingli flipped open the wallet to find stacks of 100 yens in it. He was elated, and was imagining how great his life would be for the next few days. He scanned the other cars with forlorn eyes. These were all mobile wallets to him. Even though his heart was bleeding, he decided that he shall stop for today and leave. After all, the superpower left in his body was already waning. Just as he took a few steps to flee the shopping lot, a deep male voice rang abruptly in his ear. The voice was filled with justice and respect, and he nearly fell to the ground in shock. Your limbs are perfectly fine, and yet you chose to commit daylight robbery. Don't you think you've disappointed your parents? When Ho Mingli turned to look, a wave of jealousy rose from within him. Where did this handsome man come from? Oh, he's probably one of the owners of the cars here. The flames of envy burned stronger. How could ordinary people like him survive if everyone was as handsome and rich as he was? He instinctively turned to run, but he managed to stop himself. With a shake of his head, he reminded himself that hey, he's also a superpowered individual now. See, I'll burn you to death. He used all of his might to summon flames to envelop his entire body. He looked like a human torch, and he yelled as he barged towards Fang Ning, "Get the fuck out of here. This is none of your business. I'll burn you to ashes." In his perception, this would most definitely scare the literal shit out of this guy. Well, Fang Ning was indeed surprised. His first criminal was still a normal human, but his second run-in was a person who could manipulate fire. He could feel the scorching heat from afar. This would be difficult to deal with. Well, at least he was right to feel that fighting for justice would be a hard deal to catch. It seemed that he was not the only one that developed a life hack for themselves after the fire meteor incident yesterday, Fang Ning thought. Now, it came down to who had the stronger superpower. Before Fang Ning could start to compare, he saw the system controlling his body to make some mysterious steps. Then, he found that he was behind the human torch, and his palm slapped hard at the back of his head. Whack! And the human torch face-planted into the ground. Fang Ning had no idea if he survived that. Oh, well then. There was no need for comparison after the winning party was decided. Fang Ning watched as the system skillfully put on the plastic bags and started looting. He rolled his eyes in his mind. And then, the system notifications gradually appeared. Chapter 5, Relief Time. Thief Ho Mingli has taunted the system by setting his body on fire. The system has switched to Ice Mantra, using the palm of ice. The ice seal piercing snow struck as fast as lightning, breaking the fire defense of the opponent and hitting him square on the back of his head. The system caused 75 DMG to Ho Mingli. Ho Mingli is unconscious. The system obtained 500 EXP. The system has leveled up. The system is now level 2. Health points, HP, have increased by 10. Mana points, MP, have increased by 5. Attribute points, AP, have increased by 1. The system's automatic allocation process has been completed. Strength increased by 1. Current strength points, 6. The system used Dragon's Cloud Searching Claw to search Ho Mingli's body. The system obtained RMB 34,522.05, a diamond ring. Thankfully no one died this time around, and the cash income was much more than yesterday's loot. Fang Ning looked at the collapsed man with pity-filled eyes. He saw the entire process when the man worked hard to steal the wallet in the car. This thief used almost all of his strength to get that wallet in his hands. Then, System the Great swooped in and played the system's default voice line to catch the man off guard. It took no time to defeat the thief. Basically, all of his work had benefited the system. Fang Ning left the system to its own devices, still busy with its hunt. The messages he received this time were too much for him. Even though he wasn't able to read the system's attribute interface, he knew that the system probably has a job as a martial artist, with characteristics such as health, mana, strength, and power. Then, characteristics such as luck, innateness, and perception would probably appear in the future. It definitely looked impressive, so much that Fang Ning was amazed. Aside from chronic procrastination, he was also a severe video game addict. Sadly, he had no control over the system aside from watching it twirl around town. When will it be time for him to flaunt the fact he had a system? Just as Fang Ning was knee-deep in his daydreams, an incredibly melodious voice announced chimed in some good news. The system has leveled up to level 2. The survival ability of the system has increased. Calculating the host's contribution. Calculation completed. The host's contribution was extremely weak. A 30-minute relief time will be granted to the host when after successfully returning to a safe location. Warning: the host can only relax and rest during this downtime. No other activities can be done. Fuck me, relief time? Even this term was used. I feel like a prisoner now. Besides, what are other activities? Flaunting the system won't work anymore now. Fang Ning complained. Even though the plan to show off with the system failed, Fang Ning was still incredibly excited at the thought of relief time. He stared unblinkingly at the system. It quickly left the underground parking and took numerous turns, before removing the disguise in a random public toilet. He finally arrived in his rented room shortly after. Fang Ning checked the time as he returned to the room. It was already 9:30 a.m. in the morning. There was no use to go to work today, and probably from tomorrow onwards, the word working would be entirely foreign to him. Just when Fang Ning was mourning his half-decent soon-to-be ex-employment, he suddenly realized that he was able to move once again. He could really move. Fang Ning shook his arms and stretched his legs in his room. While doing so, he found out that despite System the crossing his legs in meditation for an entire night, his legs didn't grow stiff or numb. Instead, he felt that they were more agile than they had been before. After he basked in the system's newfound internal strength in his body for just a moment, Fang Ning quickly called out to the system. System? System, come here for a second. The remaining time for the host's relief period is 29 minutes 30 seconds. The system had not specifically replied to him, but coldly reminded him instead. Damn, at least let me see how you look like. Show me your attribute interface, your task log, the lottery wheel. Oh, also the system marketplace and the system inventory. Show me everything. Fang Ning had had a touch of hubris seep into him after he regained control of his body. He felt that the system couldn't leave him, else it would never have given him the relief time in the first place. The remaining time for the host's relief period is 28 minutes and 50 seconds. Alright, you win. Show me the system inventory. You must have that. I can't see where you hid the things you looted. You'll need to liquefy your loot too, or you won't be able to increase your survival ability. Do you know how to do that? After Fang Ning heard the system notification, he knew that he couldn't simply ask questions. So System was not exactly his friend yet. He might as well ask it the crucial questions. At this time, the system finally responded. Fang Ning couldn't see the edges of the enormous wide space that appeared in his mind. He had entered here right after he shut his eyes. This space has no light source, and yet it was as bright as day. Sadly, most of the space here was still empty. only a tiny corner has a small pile of things, the loot obtained from the system's fight for justice. Tens of thousands of dollars were tied in stacks, some gold and accessories, diamond rings, smartphones. This was unbelievable. A gross calculation concluded that the system's work from last night till this morning amounted to more than his previous annual income. Unfortunately, he was a total introvert before this, and he had zero idea where to get in touch with these people who were willing to buy these stolen goods. Everything he had said just now was just to trip the intellectually slow system. However, this couldn't stop the imaginative Fang Ning. He ended up giving a suggestion to the system. "Oh, did you know, system, you could just go to the dark web." The remaining time for the host's relief is 21 minutes. Fang Ning knew that this system, that was rapidly changing the conversation topics, had no idea how to work the internet. The technologically unsavvy system was probably feeling very weird at this moment. The tiny amount of information it had about the internet was probably gotten from his memory. Now, Fang Ning was almost sure that the system probably downloaded the martial arts package, and not anything concerning modern technology. If it wanted to understand anything, it needed to get them from his own memories. Fang Ning felt a growing headache after he nailed it fact down. These things could only stay here for the time being, but the cache was still usable for now. Fang Ning was thankful for the help from the various novels he had read that equipped him, a total introvert, with some degree of investigative and tracking knowledge. Fang Ning only had 20 minutes left from his relief time. Then, he pounced on his laptop and flipped the switch to go online. Even though he was a chronic procrastinator and a severe internet addict, but he was not dumb, and his intelligence was decent. A night without going online was borderline unbearable. He quickly went online to scan the Weibo posts in his city that he had missed and skimmed the local news to get updated on the current situation. Soon, he saw the viral blog post. It was already so popular that it was the top news on the site. Vigilante versus superpowered individuals. The superpower knelt after one palm. That blog post colorfully illustrated the details on how the system defeated the thief just previously. It even included a complete video. As an observer, Fang Ning never realized how handsome he, the system, was. It probably came from the dashcam in one of the vehicles around, and the owner of the car posted it on Weibo after he found the footage. Comments were already flooding the post, and some of the comments even mentioned that they had seen similar scenes. After Fang Ning spent a long time reading the comments, a pop-up sprang from the browser. The web page is no longer available. Fang Ning slowly came to the realization that this world was probably changing already, and he had probably lost the chance to live a simple life, waiting to die. That fire meteor gave him the system, so it was entirely normal for it to bring things to other people. He had experienced some terribly unlucky incidents, but he never really been the luckiest person around. However, he felt some sense of gratitude. In comparison, he did have quite a strong system. Judging from the system's abilities since yesterday night, the system was quite reliable, despite its intellectual shortcomings. He wouldn't need to worry much in the future. "Miss Zhao Ying, please look at this body again. Are you sure that he's the dead person that you posted on your Weibo?" In some unknown place, below ground, a fat man's corpse was lying in a dark, cold drawer. Zhao Ying took a shaky glance before turning away quickly. She nodded. "Yes, it's him. All right, you can leave with them now. However, do remember that you've signed a confidentiality agreement with us. If you intentionally break it, you're liable to legal responsibilities. It's better if you could forget everything that's happened." A strict voice rang in her ears. "I understand, yes, I understand. I'll forget this as soon as possible." She stuttered out quickly as she moaned about her unlucky fate. The rich internet friend that she was catfishing turned out to be a fugitive in the end, and the handsome man that saved him had also become a fugitive. However, she was thankful that she was busy posting on Weibo and was slightly shy to have had any actual interaction with the man. She was waiting for him to come and talk to her, actually. She was probably let off the hook here because she knew nothing of importance. Sadly, she would probably never meet the handsome man in the future. She hadn't even managed to thank him. After Zhou Ying left with the two people, another group of people surrounded the chili drawer. They wore crisp suits and ties. Some of them even had sunglasses on them. However, all of them had one common characteristic: they were very strong. There was no way that they were recruited temporarily. Their eyes were lit with the fire of desire as they looked at the body, as if it were hiding some incredibly rare treasure. Chapter 6: The Need to Increase Efficiency. Brother Hai Chen, this matter requires the Truth Department, so take a look, spoke a thin young man, possibly the leader, among the group of people. He pushed up his glasses slightly, seemingly speaking to another young man with an arrogant air about him. HMPH, Mosing, look at you being all gracious. At least your Special Affairs Department knows their limits, spat Hai Chen. He walked to the front of the group and faced the man in the freezer. The expressions of the rest were ones of slight disapproval, but they could only swallow what they felt as they noticed Mosing's indifference. After a brief moment, the middle of Hai Chen's forehead split to reveal a ghastly, blood-red eyeball. Right after the eyeball appeared, it moved around in its socket before emitting a blue ray, like a spotlight, which shined down on the corpse. The blue light moved from the top to the bottom of the corpse, scanning it thoroughly. As if done with its job, the blue light disappeared as suddenly as it appeared. Looking at Hai Chen again, his third eye had disappeared, and his forehead had returned to normal, as if it had never split in the first place. It wasn't something that would have happened amongst normal humans, but none of the expressions of the people present had shifted in the slightest. They looked on at Hai Chen, awaiting his answer. It's just a crude execution done using skip punch. There aren't any fingerprints or palm prints, and the wielder had honed their vital energy to the extent where they should be able to release their internal energy externally. It isn't perfected or anything, though. I think it was just some lucky fellow that got their ancestors' martial arts prowess after the flame meteor yesterday and decided to be a vigilante. How naive! Even if their vital energy has been honed to its peak, they had a bad start and has limited potential. All they could hope for is probably to not hit a wall. Although it seems that they had good intentions. If you guys are interested in looking for them, you can maybe consider taking him in as a grade F janitor, but we're not interested. Hai Chen stopped speaking then, disinterested tone all but gone. He wasn't looking at the corpse anymore, either, for there wasn't anything else interesting to look at. Hearing his words, the rest of the party found it difficult to hide their disappointment. The Truth Department really lives up to its name. That uncanny ability to trace the root of a matter really is something to look up to, seeing as how you were able to find out everything about the perpetrator in a matter of seconds. Alright, you lot should do as Hai Chen says. Build this perpetrator's profile and give them the nickname of Vigilante A, power level F, threat level low, confidentiality level classified. It's not someone we should waste our time on, ordered Mosing at the rest, shaking his head in disappointment while doing so. Yes, Director Mo, answered someone that stood forward. Alright, everybody is dismissed. Go back to your jobs, remember to take note of new power types and to report any that you find immediately. As usual, calculate performance points according to the power types. Continued Mosing. Hai Chen, on the other hand, had already left the basement without a care for the goings-on happening within it. He had thought that he would finally be able to meet a new power type to test out his true powers after the beginning of the new era, but instead all he got was a measly ant. He would need a lot more time to meet somebody that would truly be on par with him. He turned his head, gaze landing on the door to the basement. The plaque on the door read, Special Affairs Liaison Office. The Special Affairs Department are a proactive bunch, wanting to get their hands on their own supernatural ability. But no matter how many newbies they accept, they would never be able to compete with Hai Chen, who had done his preparations since the beginning. After Fang Ning's 30-minute relief time, the system activated its Serve Justice mode once again under Fang Ning's surveillance. The system had already caught 3 thieves and 2 snatch thieves. It had traversed an uncountable number of alleys and lanes and had walked more in a day than Fang Ning did in a month. Although the system's speed wasn't slow, the range of things that it could actually do were limited, and being able to achieve that number in a day was not bad at all. Besides, it couldn't be helped that the city that Fang Ning stayed in, Key City, was a provincial city with a lot of minor security issues, but only a few criminal cases. Fang Ning's brain had been churning non-stop after looking at the system's notifications for half a day. He had finally understood why the system didn't choose a job like being a chef. Although Fang Ning was lazy, that didn't mean that his brain was. On the other hand, he thought too much but did too little. Seeing his chance pop up while the system was taking a break, Fang Ning suggested, "Hey system, don't you think that your efficiency is just a tad bit too low? You go everywhere serving justice for two things, the first being experience points and the second being to accumulate money. You also seem to have a map as your goals are always clear, but just like playing a game, you need a professional to help you increase your efficiency. Logistics is logistics, fighting is fighting." "What do you mean?" A string of words appeared in Fang Ning's brain, and he knew he had hit the jackpot. "It's simple, you need to separate the tasks for earning money and earning experience points. To earn money, we can go into the culinary business like what I said earlier, you'll be earning money way faster that way. As for earning experience points, I have a question for you, do you only earn experience points after defeating criminals? What about other people?" The system was quiet, as if it were thinking about something. After a while, right before Fang Ning lost his patience, it answered. "The system is limited by chivalrous virtue, it cannot attack the innocent or the righteous, and it also cannot rob the innocent of their belongings." Hearing the system's words, Fang Ning smiled. He had about guessed that it was so, because along the course of the day he had seen multiple instances where the system could actually take even more money and items, but hadn't. "I'll show you a possible scenario so you can witness true intelligence." After confirming the system's limitations, Fang Ning's confidence shot up drastically. Though he was bad at actually executing things, he had faith in his ability to simulate, and his imagination was a lot better than most. "Tell me quickly." The system started to pester Fang Ning for the first time, and thus went to show just how desperate the system was to increase its power, unlike its lethargic host. "We can create a treasure of sorts to donate to a certain institution, then we leak the news of the donation on a global scale. I'm sure that numerous criminals would be interested in having it for themselves. Then, all we have to do is wait for our turn to strike. As for how many criminals would turn up, that depends on how valuable our treasure is. If it's only of average value, a few would turn up, but if it possesses some special characteristic, say the ability to return one to their youth or to increase one's strength drastically, then waves of people would come for it. Know that the greed of man is immeasurable. The amount of people that have died because of greed is innumerable. Even if they were originally innocent, once they've made the decision to steal something and have appeared before us to commit that act, you can strike." Fang Ning calmly explained his simplest plan. He had plenty more up his sleeve, more elaborate schemes, but the risks of those were too high, and he was afraid he won't be able to save himself and the system. "The system is processing." The notification was sudden, but Fang Ning wasn't worried in the slightest. A while later, another notification popped up. "You have a good plan, but based on the system's current level and power, it is unable to create a treasure of that sort." Fang Ning's scorn was well hidden as he said, "You should have something like a system marketplace, right? As a system yourself, shouldn't you be able to take something from it for free? There is no such thing. What about something like a new player goodie bag? There is no such thing as well. What about a lucky draw? It is not possible for gold to drop from the sky. Then what do you have?" The system could only show Fang Ning the results from its actions of serving justice, which were the money, the rings, the watches. Fang Ning was speechless after seeing the system's items. He then asked, "What abilities do you need, and what level do you have to be able to craft a treasure?" "Once I've reached 10 points in strength and level 5. Then I have to activate my crafting ability until level 3, where I will gain the separation ability, celestial weapons creation. A few of the celestial knights should fit your plan. As long as some experience points and a few materials are used, the crafting of celestial knights with special abilities would be possible." Fang Ning then did some calculations. The system had managed to rise to level 2 after doing a night and a day's worth of work, so it wouldn't take too long to reach level 5. The system's strength has also been added with 1 point, as Fang Ning distinctly remembered the notification he had seen. 1 point added to strength, current strength level, 6 points. To reach 10 points, they would need 4 more points, meaning they would need to rise 4 more levels to level 6 instead. They also had to activate the system's crafting ability until level 3. What would that need? Fang Ning immediately questioned the system. The system's answer was immediate: to level up the crafting ability means to activate it, which consumes time and materials. The activation venue is in the system space, which is also the space that you call the inventory. That place isn't called the system inventory, but the system space. I didn't see any activation space to increase your crafting ability, though. I felt that letting you see it didn't make a difference, so I hid it, answered the system truthfully. Then can I see it now? Fang Ning scorned at the system's utilitarianism, but also felt a sense of resignation at the system. In an instant, a new system space appeared in Fang Ning's mind. Other than the looted items, he also saw a blacksmith's forge with its fire burning brightly. Under further inspection, Fang Ning noticed that despite its simplicity, the forge was equipped completely with fire bellows, iron hammers of varying sizes, an iron clamp, an iron anvil, a water tank, a sink, etc. It only lacked iron materials and coal, but it was the perfect blacksmith's forge. However, how such a crude forge would be able to craft a celestial weapon, Fang Ning could only assume that the system could bend modern science to do it. After inspecting the forge, Fang Ning suddenly asked, "System, since this forge is yours and the system is you yourself, why don't you just raise your crafting ability, your level, and your power to the maximum? Why are you training for it? This isn't a game, you're not exactly human, I doubt that you actually enjoy training and leveling up, right?" Chapter 7, System, Start an Internet Cafe for me. Fang Ning's question was brought up after much thought, and was extremely important. It concerned how he would understand the current situation. But after hearing his question, the system was quiet for a long while, not uttering a word. Fang Ning immediately felt regretful. If he had actually caused the system, with its questionable intelligence, to break down, would Fang Ning be paralyzed for the rest of his life? Thankfully, the system wasn't some third-rate software developed by Fang Ning that needed constant patches and upgrades. After a while, it reacted. It is not as simple as you think. I'm not too sure on the actual reason, all I know is that the rules given to me were set already. I can only gain power if I follow the rules. No power can be obtained easily. The way I see it, the future seems bleak, and so the only way to survive would be to work hard constantly. The relief time that I give you should be used properly too, not even a second should be wasted. If I find out that you've wasted your relief time, I'll revoke it. The system's dull words made Fang Ning feel extremely burdened. Is the future really so bleak? Fang Ning couldn't help but fall into a deep reflection. Why was the future so bleak? Will I not be able to sleep in, play video games, and read novels anymore? A future where I can no longer play video games and read novels does seem incredibly bleak indeed. Fang Ning was quiet, staring at the blacksmith stove with its brightly burning fire. A matter of time passed by before inspiration came to Fang Ning suddenly, triggered by the dancing flames in the forge's stove. Who decided that he wouldn't be able to play video games after having his body seized by the system? As a master of procrastination and laziness, Fang Ning used his free time for gaming and novels. National Day Golden Week had been his favorite holiday since he started working, because he can spend a whole week just lazing at home playing video games or reading novels without stepping even 1 foot out of his home. The only time he ever left the house was just to get food. Oh great system, your humble servant has tried his best in coming up with 2 professional routes to earning money and experience points. As long as you carry out my plan of earning money through the culinary industry and earning experience points through luring criminals, your efficiency will increase tenfold. Seeing as I have contributed so much, mind giving a reward in advance? The system was quiet for a moment before answering. What do you want in advance? Since you can make a blacksmith's forge in your system space, is it possible to make an internet cafe for me? It doesn't have to be too big, the space of 2 computers is good enough, answered Fang Ning immediately. Renault's buzz off. The tone the two words were spoken with was more than enough to convey the system's intentions. Now, at least let me finish. I'm not going to use it to play games, as if we can work together when the time comes. I can use it to run battle simulations, play video games, analyze other people's experiences, reading online novels and online news, and finally design our future plans, saying it is easier than doing it. You can use my body to exterminate criminals and earn money, being an errand runner, and you can even cut my relief time in half. As compared to when you were working alone, wouldn't having to increase our efficiency 2 times? The system really was lacking in intelligence. Once Fang Ning mentioned that it was all to increase its power, it was hooked. The system is processing. Fang Ning was confident in his knowledge of the system's intelligence. Not a while later, the notification he was expecting popped up. The system has agreed to your suggestion of increasing efficiency. The system has decided to open a standalone venue in the system's space, an internet cafe. Computers and electric sources can be deposited here after being bought externally. But due to the lack of experience points currently, the system is unable to initiate a connection externally. Then let's not wait any longer. Let's go, system, time to serve justice. Let me see that map of yours too. I have to plan the route to take. Remember to prepare clothes for changing too. Changing your appearance won't be enough if you've caught too many criminals. There's also the problem of fingerprints and DNA. It'll be bad if our true identity and our vigilante identity were to be connected. Look at you, overlooking so many things. If I hadn't given you suggestions and you had continued catching criminals, you would have ended up in jail in a week's time. If that had happened, you can say goodbye to increasing your power or whatever. Of course I know all this from reading things on the internet, so you can see for yourself just how important having an internet cafe is. Without realizing it, it was already midnight. At this timing yesterday, Fang Ning was still sleeping soundly. Even during the day, Fang Ning had just watched the system go about its day, not bothering to say anything. Now that the system had opened an internet cafe in the system's space, Fang Ning was unexpectedly taking the initiative. Although, the problems raised by Fang Ning were indeed ones of substance. The system just could not understand its host. At times, it felt that its slothful host has been pulling its leg, but sometimes the system saw the logic behind its host's words. While the system was still confused, Fang Ning had gotten a hold on the system's map and had planned the best routes to be taken that night. The system immediately forgot about its worries after Fang Ning was done. It would rather hunt down criminals than understand its host. At the same time, Zhao Ying had returned to her rented room, her stomach growling with hunger, although she didn't feel the least bit hungry. After spending a whole day in that gloomy place recording statements, signing documents, recording her palm prints, drawing her blood and obtaining her DNA, she was beyond exhausted. Thankfully it was all over, but every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was the corpse that had died with their eyes wide open, and that man that had saved her. Their silhouettes paced in her mind, and she felt as if she was still at the crime scene, and that a criminal would appear any time now. But it was quiet in her rented room. Usually at this timing, she would be able to hear the soft sounds of a video playing from the room next door. That guy probably thought that she was asleep and so didn't feel compelled to wear earphones. But there wasn't even a peep of sound from the room next door. Zhao Ying couldn't see light under the door either. The couple that was renting with them seemed to be absent too, so Zhao Ying was alone in the entire house. She oddly missed that guy all of a sudden. At least when he was around, the house felt safer. She was pretty sure about that guy's character. He was honest and good-natured, and had never flirted with her ever. In the 2 years she'd been renting this room, she'd never heard him speak more than a few sentences. Forget it, she might as well whip up a late-night snack for some late-night internet browsing. Maybe she can spend the night watching some movies featuring buff men. While planning her night, Zhao Ying turned on all the lights in the house. With the house as bright as the sun, she finally felt a sliver of security. As she moved to the kitchen, she caught a whiff of a faint fragrance, causing her appetite to improve slightly. Fang Ning returned to the rented house, weariness weighing his shoulder down. After catching criminals an entire night, it was already 4 o'clock in the morning. He unlocked the front door and entered the brightly lit living room. Gunshots and cannon sounds from an American blockbuster sounded softly from the room next to his. "You're back?" The door of the room next to his opened suddenly and out popped his beautiful housemate's head. Seeing that it was Fang Ning, she breathed a sigh of relief. Fang Ning only stared at her briefly without uttering a word, and then made a beeline for his room. "Hey, did you cook that meal that was in the kitchen?" "I finished it, and since it was so good, I won't get angry at you for using the eggs, onions, and garlic that I bought." The girl seemed to be explaining something to him, but it felt more like she was just looking for something to talk about. Fang Ning stilled in his actions suddenly and turned to scan her from head to toe before asking, "If it really was that good, then would you be interested in joining me in opening a breakfast restaurant?" Zhao Ying was about to reject instinctually, but when she thought back to how good the meal was, she immediately nodded her head in agreement and said, "Definitely interested, as long as I get to eat food like that every day." She's not stupid, she knew the value of good food in this modern city. "Well then, sleep soon, staying up late isn't good for the skin." Hearing Fang Ning's concern, Zhao Ying felt slightly touched and was just about to say thank you, but Fang Ning continued instead with, "If you lose your good looks, I might consider changing business partners." "Bastard, can't believe you only wanted me as a business partner because of my looks. But at least you have good taste, good food and a beautiful woman is definitely a foolproof idea." Zhao Ying took in Fang Ning's appearance and realized that after cleaning up properly, he was really quite handsome. Yesterday night when she had met him before leaving on her date, she had thought so too. Now that she knew Fang Ning could also cook really well, Zhao Ying instantly felt that this guy wasn't a bad choice as a back burner. She suddenly felt the fearful images from her mind clear, and so immediately went to bed. Chapter 8, There's no problem that imagination cannot fix. A week later, a space of around 10 square meters was rented for the breakfast restaurant. Once the documents were done and submitted, the restaurant officially opened. And so, Fang Ning quit his job and led a good life of working during the day and staying together at night with his gorgeous roommate, Zhao Ying. Which was impossible, because he still had to spend his nights catching criminals with the system. As for the problems of safety which would crop up during its vigilante sprees that Fang Ning had thought up, the system had discussed them thoroughly with Fang Ning. In the end, both had agreed to a win-win situation where they could coexist with no repercussions to the other, which came up after much exchanging of opinions, imagination. This was enough to prove that discussion was always better than conflict, that communication would always be better than argument. As long as the both of them maintained this constant discussion and communication, their win-win situation would also remain intact. As for the problems of safety, it was just what Fang Ning had said previously, the problem of fingerprints, DNA, and the fact that the exercise routes of both Fang Ning's true identity and vigilante identity were overlapping. If any of these problems were to be left unsolved, the vigilante identity would be exposed and Fang Ning would suffer the consequences. The system had told Fang Ning not to worry in regards to fingerprints, as whenever the system went on a justice spree, it would always activate the body's vital energy to form an automated protective layer around the body. This meant that whenever the system touched something, the hands would always be behind a protective layer. This was actually the system's way of avoiding touching poisonous enemies so that it wouldn't die accidentally. After all, substances that could transmit poison through touching the skin were quite abundant before, so it's safe to say that there were more now, especially after the flame meteor. As for the possibility of being identified by DNA, the system did not have a solution. If it changed Fang Ning's DNA every time it disguised itself, Fang Ning himself would die, as his cells would be fighting each other. The system could only try its best to ensure that Fang Ning's body would not be injured, mind its saliva, as well as keep its hair from falling. This was highly difficult, unless Fang Ning became a monk. Fang Ning had no hope of actually fulfilling those requirements, cause in the heat of a fight, there really was no guarantee his body would come out intact. In the end, it all depended on Fang Ning's imagination. After asking the system thoroughly on what capabilities it possessed, Fang Ning finally came up with a plan to avoid his DNA being analyzed. The system was equipped with an abundance of mantras for internal strength, with a majority of those being fire-based mantras. These mantras produced fire-based vital energy when activated, which was powerful enough to burn a person. The system could also convert fire-based vital energy to automatic body care vital energy. The system would be able to know, in advance, if any tissue from Fang Ning's body was about to break away due to its high-speed thinking and comprehensive perspective. It could, therefore, activate the fire-based vital energy flowing through the body, so that the tissue can be incinerated to destruction immediately upon breakaway. This would seem difficult to do, for even a wuxia master, who in the end, was still human and would make mistakes, but to the system, it was just one more way of monitoring the body in real time. Of course, this meant that the system would be constantly multitasking. Now that this could be done, even if a strand of Fang Ning's hair were to fall, it would be incinerated to dust even before it left his scalp. DNA can't exactly be obtained from dust now, can it? It would be the same for blood or spit or whatever. In conclusion, Fang Ning's DNA was now under protection, and would never be found in a random place anywhere. Hearing its host's imaginative plan, the system couldn't help but admit that there was an obvious difference in intelligence between the two of them. It also accepted that its host's brain was an important part of what made up Fang Ning. Although this plan would restrict the system to constantly using fire-based vital energy to protect its body, at least there was no longer a risk of being exposed, which was completely acceptable. If worst came to worst and the system had no choice but to switch mantras, the system would just have to run away. No matter how stupid this system was, it probably isn't stupid enough to give itself a task that could get itself killed. Now that the problem of fingerprints and DNA being left behind has been solved, the two most concrete sources, the identity of the vigilante running around catching criminals, would have been eliminated. There was still the problem Fang Ning's actual identity and vigilante identity having the same exercise routes, though. Fang Ning really couldn't figure out a solution to this problem, and told the system that unless it could somehow create a clone of Fang Ning, it would largely remain unsolved. What Fang Ning didn't expect was for the system to actually create a clone. Is this guy reliable? Fang Ning stared at the clone that had suddenly appeared in the system space. The clone's appearance had given him a fright, as Fang Ning could not see even a sliver of difference between himself and his clone. How did this wuxia-based system manage to create something that needed science? How was this possible? When a notification finally appeared, Fang Ning's confusion dissipated. Low-level mechanical puppet, possesses carpentry abilities, 700 experience points, is able to craft items using externally looted wood and leather. Current skills, simple conversation, basic mimicry of movements. After looking at the mechanical puppet's functions, Fang Ning sized it up once again before nodding his head approvingly. Alright, I've always been a homebody, so I don't usually move around a lot, therefore having it just cooped up at home wouldn't be much of a difference. Even if somebody attacked me straight up or something, I can cook up some reason to deal with it, so nobody would think I'm a vigilante at all. With all three problems solved, the system could finally continue catching criminals. Fang Ning was also enjoying good business with his breakfast restaurant as well. The restaurant got popular quickly. After all, the food industry relied on word of mouth and regular customers. Once an excellent restaurant was set up, there wasn't even a need for advertising. With the power of social networking and sharing among friends, the restaurant's fame grew quickly. The need to eat manifests in every human being, and it was never good to look down on the power of foodies as well. With only a week of business behind it, the breakfast restaurant already had a line that snaked towards the opposite. There were even expensive cars seen stopping at the breakfast restaurant. Lots of people would even ask the workers there if lunch and dinner were provided, or if delivery services were catered. With circumstances such as this, Fang Ning really had no choice but to hire more people. Of course, he himself was too lazy to care about managing so many people, so the responsibility was pushed onto Zhao Ying instead. As for Zhao Ying herself, with a raise and a promotion to being the manager of the restaurant, was on the way to the peak of her life, finally taking her first step into being the perfect woman. Fang Ning, on the other hand, had started suffering from blessed worries. "Boss, what do you think of my outfit today? Do I look good?" On this particular morning, the now slightly famous breakfast beauty, Zhao Ying, was dressed in a blue and white sailor's outfit. She had on light makeup, and looked absolutely adorable. As business had slowed down for a bit, she had run to the kitchen to flirt with the busy Fang Ning. Fang Ning stared blankly at Zhao Ying and nodded his head. "Yeah, you look nice." Zhao Ying smiled and twirled herself around before resting herself against Fang Ning's side, her hand lightly brushing his side. With hooded eyes, she continued, "Then why is your reaction so subdued? Is it because I don't look pretty enough? What reaction do you want exactly?" Fang Ning stilled in his movements briefly before coming to realization exaggeratedly, nodding his head and saying, "Oh, I know now." Right after saying that, Fang Ning set down his spatula. He started clapping his hands loudly, all the while going, "That's great." Zhao Ying was stunned. After regaining herself, she rolled her eyes and left the kitchen with a HMPH. "You blockhead. How boring." "Haha, you've guessed right. The system was controlling my body, and out of the dialogue options he gave me, that was the best choice for you to save some face. If I had chosen anything else, you would have died of embarrassment." "You better be thankful," Fang Ning continued, laughing in the system space. He was peacefully playing a video game in the internet cafe when the system had suddenly presented him with dialogue options. The other options were, "Don't waste my time. If you were as pretty as the beauties of ancient times, maybe I would have cared more. And there's no point in showing me. If you can pull more customers in, then maybe you'll be even slightly useful." If he had chosen either choice, Zhao Ying would have created a fuss. Although it was easy to hire replacements in this age, Fang Ning was at least familiar with Zhao Ying, so making her angry really wasn't worth the hassle of finding a new manager. To a serious procrastinator, doing anything extra was just too difficult. Other than the fact that Zhao Ying was always on the lookout for a man to depend on, she was actually quite dependable herself. She was quite a perfectionist, always doing her best in welcoming customers and overlooking the accounts of the restaurant. She also oversaw the ordering of ingredients. She didn't play favorites too. All in all, Zhao Ying was excellent at her job. With a boss who only cooked 2 hours per day and never cared for anything else, Zhao Ying played an important role in ensuring the restaurant ran smoothly, what with the restaurant expanding steadily in size and customer base. Other than Zhao Ying's occasional attempts at flirting with Fang Ning, it was quite peaceful in the restaurant. Within a few weeks, Fang Ning's income from the restaurant rolled in like waves. Just when he was considering expanding the restaurant properly to a bigger one that offered all 3 meals and delivery services, the system revolted. "No, using 2 hours every day to cook is more than enough. Using more time is not permitted, and should be used instead for training." What a headache. Although he did know that the restaurant's immense popularity was due to the system's hard work at cooking while Fang Ning enjoyed the results, and also due to the system using his body and energy. The system really didn't need to do any worrying about the restaurant at all. Fang Ning felt that the only way to continue bluffing the system was to use his imagination again. Chapter 9, If it's possible, then open another one. Fang Ning started firing up his imagination to tackle the difficulty posed by the system. Now that Fang Ning thought about it, the system's culinary skills were extraordinary. Its cooking was hard to forget, which was no wonder why the restaurant had managed to attract so many customers in such a short time. However, nothing stood out in its cooking process. The ingredients used were of average quality, and although its culinary skills were amazing and it was a master at adjusting the heat to boot, there were not special skills, and master chefs could easily replicate what it did. Ultimately, it came down to the system's extraordinary grasp on seasoning and spices. Its combinations were godlike, and its grasp on it made it such that adding a tad more would be too much, but adding a tad less would be too little. This was something that could not be controlled by a mere human being, as there was no possible way for a master chef to be as precise with seasoning as the system. Although it was indeed wuxia-based, it was still a system, and precision came easy to it. With this, Fang Ning had a new idea in mind. "Oh system, I've seen through your skills. Your cooking is remarkable due to your precise grasp of seasoning and spices. Although it depends a lot on using them accurately at the right timing, A bit of difference in heat doesn't matter. Why don't you whip up a few different seasonings and then we can hire a few chefs to learn how to use them properly. Although their cooking won't be able to compare to yours, it doesn't have to, as long as it is better than our competitors. Once Fang Ning was done, the system answered almost immediately. You should have mentioned this earlier. The time taken these past 2 weeks will be deducted out of your relief time. Yes, whatever you say is my command. Fang Ning thought to himself, if it weren't for me observing your cooking these past couple of weeks, who would have figured out that it was due to your grasp on seasoning? You stupid system, why don't you know how to accumulate experience yourself? It's up to you to cut my relief time. I already have an internet cafe anyways, although I can only download novels and video games during relief time, it's more than enough to satisfy me. Up till now, there hadn't been an issue that I've needed to use my relief time on. Although there has been an issue on my mind since the system appeared, the chance to address it still hasn't appeared yet. Under Fang Ning's guidance, the system quickly cooked up various types of seasonings. It then hired a few average chefs to cook with them as a trial. After realizing that the outcomes were good, although they weren't better than the originals, the food made was still indeed better than their competitors. From then onwards, the system's extraordinary cooking could only be enjoyed by Fang Ning alone, while all the rest would have to settle for bootleg versions of the food. Fang Ning and the system both expressed agreement to the plan, and it was another win-win situation under the belt. However, the very first batch of customers that had tasted the system's food was angry beyond relief. Some even as far as to badmouth Fang Ning's restaurant on social networking sites, saying that the restaurant had fallen steeply in quality. Newer customers couldn't taste any difference, though. Fang Ning, however, had never thought that Zhao Ying would be an exception. After the both of them had distributed the money earned these past few weeks between themselves, their pockets were extremely thick, and it was obvious enough to anyone that they no longer had to worry about money. Now, the couple of them had moved out of their rented house to rent apartments nearer to the restaurant, where they could enjoy lives away from disturbance. However, once the food in the restaurant had been switched out with the bootleg versions and Zhao Ying had realized that she would not be able to eat delicacies, she had resorted to constantly leaving her new home to taking advantage of Fang Ning's cooking at his own home. If it weren't for the system insisting that females and males should be distanced from each other and rejected her requests of cohabitation, Fang Ning himself was against the system's decision. However, they probably would have continued staying together. Despite so, Zhao Ying had stopped renting her new home, because of the good food and other unknown reasons, and had instead moved to the apartment right opposite Fang Ning's. Fang Ning was a lazy person that viewed play above all else in life, and his immunity towards beauty was quite bad too. All in all, Fang Ning was a man riddled with shortcomings. Fang Ning had but one strong point, and that was that he was a grateful person. Zhao Ying was still someone he knew. First and foremost, although she liked flirting with rich men, she had a good heart to her and was responsible to her job as well, and she was beautiful to boot. So, Fang Ning didn't have it in him to actually kick her away each time. As for the possibility of his secret being exposed, Fang Ning could only laugh. If he couldn't even hide it from a harmless female in his life, how would he hide it from strong opponents in the future? A month had since passed, and in the time, Fang Ning had developed his breakfast restaurant into an all-day restaurant. Furthermore, he also now had 8 chains citywide. They're all located within the busiest sections of the city, and were all led by bosses with respectable backgrounds who had all approached him first for cooperation opportunities. All of their proposals were detailed too, and none felt like they were forcing Fang Ning into a collaboration. Circumflex Fang Ning himself hadn't rejected their proposals either, and now their restaurants had switched to being called Fang's Delicious Catering Chain. Fang Ning himself didn't have to do or care for much too now. All he had to do nowadays was supply the system's seasonings to his restaurants and reap the profit of his sales. His own sales were of course not distributed to anybody. But this was more than enough. In the first month of business with 8 busy chain restaurants, Fang Ning had managed to earn 16 million. His business partners were happy, his workers were happy, his customers were happy, the system was happy, everybody he could think of was happy. Within these few days, however, no matter how hard-working the system was at serving justice and looting, the best loot it could obtain was merely worth 50,000. When further compared with how much time both sides were spending on earning money, it was obvious that the difference between both was enormous. Fang Ning was not surprised at all, however, as history has always proven that earning money through business and trading was always more efficient than simply looting money. Although what the system was doing right now could also be counted as some form of business and trading, due to the system's unwillingness to increase the output of its seasonings, it was hard to earn more money. Although the system previously worked for 2 hours every day cooking, nowadays during its break time it would just be cooking up the seasonings for exactly half an hour. It also didn't help that the system would rather spend time on meditation than earning money. And with the amount of seasonings the system was cooking now, supplying to 8 restaurants is already the limit. At least Fang Ning was the type to be happy with small fortunes, and the money they were earning each month was more than enough to satisfy his needs. On top of that, looking at how the system was also unwilling to work harder, it was obvious that the income they were earning now was also more than enough for the system. As to what the system actually spent the money on, it was all on materials that piled up day after day in the system space. High-quality wood, high-quality leather, high-quality iron, various types of expensive medicines and herbs. Although Fang Ning couldn't understand why the system was spending money on these things, at least he knew where the money was going. Besides, the system bought everything legally, so there was no risk of being found out too. Who knows, the world could be changing as they know it, so as a newly birthed tycoon, there was no harm in stocking up just in case, right? Adding that on to the arrival of good news, Fang Ning couldn't care less about the system now. Due to the fact that they would no longer be exposed as a vigilante, and also that their income was increasing day by day, the system that had seized Fang Ning's body had silently installed real-time connection in the internet cafe situated in the system space, using its hard-earned experience points. Nonetheless, the system had warned Fang Ning that this feature consumed experience points, and so it was a big sacrifice for the system. Fang Ning nodded his head while browsing the internet, as he knew the system valued the equal distribution of work. He promised the system that he would continue using his imagination to help the system solve all its problems, both big and small. After managing to bluff the system away, Fang Ning sneakily opened an online video game. As the game booted up, Fang Ning heaved a sigh of relief at the familiar screen. I can finally game to my heart's content. No, I can finally draft better plans for the system. Looking for information is so difficult, I even have to go onto foreign websites. At least I can look at how the foreign countries are doing, and maybe I can learn English properly too, which would make it easier for me to play foreign video games, fibbed Fang Ning after he had accidentally revealed a tad too much. He silently reminded himself not to speak before thinking. Although it was possible to bluff the system, he shouldn't be bluffing the system so obviously. Thankfully, the system was busy catching criminals and hadn't heard what he had said. If not, Fang Ning would probably have his internet connection severed. The system was cruel in the sense that it viewed survival as one, and it wasted no time or effort in growing stronger. Whoever that dared to look down on the system would be a fool. Chapter 10, Silently became a role model. Everybody listen up. I'll be explaining the current situation and the problems we will be facing. Ever since the Kixi Flame Meteor incident, 2 months have passed and various individuals with supernatural abilities have awakened in Key City. There have been numerous types, and the methods of awakening were all different too. After 2 months of hard work, we have a basic understanding of the situations these individuals had awakened under. We can now finally pull in the net. In a basement somewhere in Key City was Key City's Special Affairs Liaison Office, and in the office, a top-secret meeting was in session. Director Mo, despite his thin stature, had taken advantage of the disadvantageous situation and was currently leading the meeting, analyzing the situation and conveying the higher-ups' orders to his underlings. Moving on to the situation with these superpowered individuals. Although categorizing them is still a difficulty, for now we can do this according to their rule of thought. Doing so will also benefit the following steps in our job, which would be the launching of educational engineering. We've roughly categorized their actions to the following 4 types. 1. types using their abilities to legally earn money. 2. Types using their abilities to serve justice. 3. Types not using their abilities at all. And 4. Types using their abilities to bully murder the innocent. Our higher-ups have given us a simple way to deal with all 4 types, which is to support the first type, to limit the second type, to rally the third type and to strike out at the fourth type. After his explanation, he flicked the electronic pen in his hand and a PowerPoint slide appeared on the projector screen, hanging by the side of the wall. On the slide was what Director Mo wanted to continue with. Skipping the first slide of the PowerPoint, a slide titled 1, Types Using Their Abilities to Legally Earn Money. Under the title was a full-body shot of a man of average height and chubby stature. His slightly good looks didn't hide the dullness in his gaze, however. Next to the photo was the man's biography that read, File No Q432, Confidentiality Level, Top Secret. Full name, Fang Ning, birth date, the 11th of December, 1989, gender, male, hobbies, video games, novels and various electronic devices. Personality, lazy, easygoing. Supernatural ability, enhancement of the taste of food. Life records link, XXXX, fingerprint code link, XXXX, DNA code link, XXXXXXX, facial recognition link XXXXX, iris recognition link. While pointing at Fang Ning's portrait, Director Mo opened his resume. His resume showed the explosively popular restaurant chains under his name as well as his accounts, which were enough to leave anybody speechless. And it was only what Fang Ning had achieved in 2 months after obtaining his supernatural abilities. This person is the perfect example of the first type of superpowered individuals. By depending on his ability to enhance the taste of food, he has concocted unique seasonings. Through undercover investigations, we have determined the seasonings as harmless and non-poisonous. Because of the extreme flavor in the seasonings, it has made quite a sweep in the market, beating out a lot of its competitors. What is even more surprising is that despite earning so much through using his ability, this Fang Ning has not forgotten himself and where he came from, as he spends most of his time cooped up at home to browse the internet, play video games or reading novels. He has not squandered his massive earnings through gambling or prostitution, which makes things very easy for our people observing him. From his actions, we can tell that he is actively maintaining the peace of current society and is willing to continue doing so. Mozing's praises for Fang Ning were of course due to the fact that Mozing had no idea about the system's existence, and that it wasn't because Fang Ning didn't like spending money, he just wasn't allowed to. He may love reading novels and playing video games, but he wasn't immune to beauty. With a relief time of only 30 minutes, which was honestly only enough for Fang Ning to get his mail from his mailbox at the lobby of his apartment, Fang Ning really couldn't do much without suffering the repercussions of the system. Of course, Mozing at least said something right. Fang Ning was definitely a lazy homebody that didn't want a war on his doorstep. If society were to crumble, who would continue developing video games or updating his novels for his pleasure? As Mozing continued, he couldn't help but think of the recent difficulties they had faced and sighed, "My comrades, if all the abilities had awakened in people like Fang Ning, can you imagine how much less we would have to worry about? Not only would we be able to increase key cities' GDP, we could also increase the overall happiness of the citizens." With these type of superpowered individuals, our higher-ups have clearly stated that we are to protect them especially. We are to also promote this behavior among other superpowered individuals. Hearing this, the others in the room nodded their head fervently. Director Mo's explanation was easy to understand. The higher-ups weren't exactly viewing all superpowered individuals as unstable liabilities. As long as the superpowered individuals were not actively destroying societal order and were obtaining benefits legally, the higher-ups would be supportive. People like Fang Ning, who were harmless contributors, were, of course, people who would not be on the news for destruction or the like. It was no secret that the higher-ups would of course favor these type of superpowered individuals the most. With the favor of the higher-ups, these individuals would be allowed to continue living freely in society as role models. As for the individuals with abilities that were akin to the Hulk, even if they were inherently harmless, the organization would of course only favor those that didn't go crazy in broad daylight. As the meeting went on, nobody would have known that Director Mo's words would cause a wave in a corner of Key City in the near future. As usual, Zhao Ying was suffering from another worry of happiness. She had just seen the guy that saved her last time, right in her restaurant. He had even ordered some food, meaning that he would be here a while. She had originally thought that she would never be able to meet him again, what with Key City's massive population. It just wasn't possible for two strangers to bump into each other within a short time frame. Right now, however, Zhao Ying was so glad that she had accepted Fang Ning's invitation to join his breakfast business. She was sure that her savior had visited the restaurant due to its popularity. Fang's delicious catering chain was famous in Key City, and almost all the verified foodies in the city had visited the restaurant at least once. As for the first restaurant that Fang Ning had opened, it had developed into a full-day restaurant, which only increased its allure. Walking with exaggerated flair, Zhao Ying had personally picked a good spot for her savior and had even ordered the chefs to give him extra food and extra seasoning, just to guarantee her savior's satisfaction. She knew that she wasn't an ungrateful person. He had saved her, how could she look past that? She would of course have to give him the best welcome to show just how grateful of a person she was. The fact that her savior had appeared in broad daylight once again was obviously due to the fact that he must have dealt with the excessive defense incident. From where she was standing, even her savior's back looked extremely attractive. He was responsible, handsome, and was definitely of a good background, so how could she not properly welcome him? Just thinking about him made her heart go wild. "Hey, handsome, remember me?" asked Zhao Ying softly as she leaned against her savior's table. Zhao Ying was currently experiencing a dilemma in her heart, however. After putting in hard work for almost 2 months, her boss had seemed to settle with a steady income. Although she did work towards influencing her boss in expanding, Fang Ning was just a bit too dense. He was already happy with the small fortune he had amassed. Even when he was faced with the opportunity to expand his business, he had stopped in his tracks, which Zhao Ying was quite angry about. She wants to be the president of a successful restaurant chain, not the manager of a big restaurant. Her savior's appearance, however, had made her waver. He was only sitting there, not even uttering a word, but her heart was already half his. They really were living in a shallow world. Men and women were the same. No matter how long an average-looking man has spent courting the woman of his dreams, he would still not be able to defeat the woman's ideal man. At the same time, spending his time playing a co-op shooter video game in the System Space's internet cafe was Fang Ning, who was interrupted by the sudden appearance of dialogue options. "Shit, I'll have to give up this match." Fang Ning quickly gave his orders to the rest of his team members and left the game, paying no heed to the complaints of his team members. He then looked at the options he was presented with. "A weak female whom you previously saved has met you at a restaurant and is now speaking to you. You can now confirm that she had been questioned by the relevant authorities and had leaked some information about you. Your choices are: 1. Who are you? Do I look like I'll know you? 2. Oh, I saved you but you sold me out. Get out of my face. 3. You can continue staring coldly at her while waiting for your food to arrive, as if she didn't exist." Fang Ning realized that after offering multiple suggestions to the system had changed its thoughts about him. However, the choices offered to him now all possessed a certain degree of similarity. Ignoring the options shown to him, Fang Ning instead chose to speak openly to the system. "Oh system, I've realized that you have such a bad mouth, all the choices would just cause me to be disliked. Why can't we speak to people properly?" Fang Ning knew that the system wasn't exactly human, and therefore didn't have a sense of right and wrong. It never did things that were useless and always did things with meaning. This was why Fang Ning was confused. Why is the system always speaking as if it wanted to pick a fight with the other person? Was it necessary for catching criminals? Chapter 11, You need aggro for your ulti? That's simple. It's because you need aggro? Fang Ning blinked. Of course he was familiar with aggro. He played way too many games for his own good, and that was a pretty common mechanism. The player would need to have full aggro before an ulti could be deployed. So, did this mean that this martial arts type system had the same mechanism? Oh, so you're saying that once you've accumulated enough aggro, you would be able to use your ulti? That this is exactly like in the games? Fang Ning finally understood. That's exactly it. The system affirmed. Still, was there a need for that now? It's not like we've faced any tough opponents, right? It was a rare occurrence for Fang Ning to actually care about the progress of the system. After all, he'd been in it for almost 2 months, and to be honest, he was feeling quite guilty about it. God knows how many people there were out there, and how many of them would want to come out and test their mettle. The system is now at level 10. Based on the farming scheme you proposed, we still need to accumulate quite an amount of EXP in order to complete the celestial weapon in progress. However, at the moment of completion, there will be a strange sight, which has a high probability of attracting very strong opponents. The current level and skills that the system possesses is not sufficient. The system explained, confirming Fang Ning's fear. The latter felt a weird sense of excitement, though. He was happy because the system, oh sweet diligencer system, managed to get to level 10 without any worrying and chewing on Fang Ning's part. That progress was relentless, and Fang Ning knew what a feat that was after he learned how difficult it was to actually gain a level. He could not even bear to look at the EXP requirement and the difficulty. The system was so quick that even his legendary history in leveling up his characters during his past life was almost like child's play. That was emphasized by how the system needed to run all around and actively search for its prey to farm. If it were Fang Ning, a notoriously weak-willed individual, he would have given up after level 3 or 4. He might feel the initial rush and ride it in order to show off, but the tedious process would probably wear him out instantly. A diligent person would only manage till level 5 or 6. No one else could farm 24/7 like how Sir System did. The thing that scared Fang Ning was that even Sir System, farming maniac extraordinaire, was scared. It actually said that there might be opponents that it wasn't able to handle. So what you're saying is, you need to rely on aggro to use your ulti, and that you're planning to take them out all in one shot. Fang Ning finally grasped the situation. That's correct. The system is now level 10, and can spend some of the EXP to learn esoteric skills or upgrade ordinary martial arts skills to become esoteric martial arts. However, aggro is spent for each use of an esoteric skill. When the opponent is stronger, a wider variety of esoteric skills would be needed in order to defeat them. The skills can help in our escape should the situation turn sour, too. Aggro can only be obtained from humans. You can generate your own aggro, or you could piss people off for aggro. The system can collect all of the aggro linked to you, and accumulate them to unlock the aggro bar. One bar is unlocked by default, but an additional aggro bar would be given every 5 levels the system gains. Every esoteric skill will exhaust at least 1 aggro bar. Currently, there are 3 aggro bars, and the first level aggro bar is already 70% full. Oh, great. Even though the system was just a tad dumb, I knew that it would never do anything useless. Fang Ning now understood how valuable aggro was. Frankly, they were almost like hidden trump cards. Having aggro would allow him to execute esoterics, break through defenses, or quickly make an escape. No matter what, both of their fates were tied together, and the worst that could happen was that they would both GG, and reincarnate together. After he had managed to clear up those things, Fang Ning thought about Zhao Ying, who was actively flirting with his vigilante identity. Even though he had liked this beautiful woman, one who couldn't stop teasing him, well, she was extremely easy on the eyes, he held up on any plans to go into a relationship with her. One of the many reasons was that he knew that Zhao Ying had a history of going after the rich ones. Besides, he was actually rich now, all thanks to Sir System, and some unspeakable ideas that have been dormant within him had started to stir. All things aside, he needed to teach this bitch a small lesson today so that firstly, she would stop toying with him like he was some stupid rich kid and thus causing him to feel all hot and bothered after, and secondly, he would help the system to save up some potentially life-saving dosh. He was aiming for 2 birds with 1 stone. Fang Ning was not an idiotic system that only knew how to obtain aggro using wildly unpolished methods. To him, anything he could think of was better than that. "So system, show me the network we have as the disguised vigilante," Fang Ning requested. Anything remotely related to increasing his overall abilities would always receive the quickest response from the system. Soon, a relationship network diagram of Vigilante A was sent to the computer that Fang Ning was playing on. Once Fang Ning scanned the diagram, and an idea popped up almost immediately. It was guaranteed that the system would get loads of aggro from this. So system, the 3 options you provided previously were not efficient enough. Let me take the wheel instead. Zhao Ying fully expected the Prince Charming to smile after she went to initiate the conversation. He was quite cordial, nodding as a sign that he did remember her. Just when she wanted to take another step and grow closer to him after a long friendly conversation, she heard a woman's voice from behind her. "Hubby, who's this? Do you know her? Which bitch dared to call her Mr. Right hubby?" Zhao Ying turned to look, only to find before her a gorgeous lady, elegant, even without any makeup. She walked towards them, donned in a dress white as snow. Her curves filled in just the right places, and her overall outfit would cost at least RMB 10,000. She swayed with her stride, but she was not unsteady, and her smile was soft. Her entire being screamed of her wealth. She must have come from a big family. Zhao Ying's rage burned stronger. System notification, Zhao Ying's aggro is rising. Oh, she's just someone who I saved off-handedly. I don't really remember much, but she seemed to work here as a waiter. Yana, I've ordered for us. The food will be here soon. This place is quite decent. You're the best to me, hubby, said the gorgeous woman as she leaned in to peck on the handsome vigilante's face. They shared an intimate moment, and Zhao Ying's face twisted at the public display of affection. She felt like a real waitress, standing there just like that. Hey, waitress, don't just stand there doing nothing. Go and fetch us some drinks. Well, we can't expect much from a shop this small. You probably haven't even went for any good training programs. But you shouldn't give up on yourself. A class or 2 outside of work would help, and you should really learn how to speak proper English, as it would immediately boost your career. You might end up in some multinational hotel. My family has a few under us, and I might be able to recommend you to 1 or 2, said the lady, her voice soft and her eyes kind. Yeah, I thank you on behalf of my family and all my dead ancestors for your reference, hissed Zhao Ying internally. She forced a wide smile to stop herself from losing composure in front of her Mr. Right. System notification, Zhao Ying's aggro has reached critical levels. Aggro can now be extracted. At the same time, a waiter delivered the food to the table. They don't look like anything special though. It's not as pretty as the ones prepared by Wang Ma and the others one. It does smell quite nice, though. Leaning against the handsome vigilante, the lady frowned slightly before a flash of disbelief flashed briefly on her face. It disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Why are the portions so massive? I never had a big appetite. Eat more for me, hubby. All right. The both of them ate out of one plate, the chopsticks dancing around each other as they savored the delicacy that Zhao Ying specially told the chef to pay more attention to. System notification, Zhao Ying's aggro has reached its maximum. Commencing extraction. Aggro bar 1 increases by 10%, now at 80%, Zhao Ying used every shred of willpower she'd had in her life to stop herself from exploding on the spot. Instead, she stomped her way back to the front of the lobby and sunk on a chair, after which she never stopped glaring at the 2 lovebirds. Ha ha ha, who told you to be a bitch and play with the feelings of others? Fang Ning was extremely satisfied with the outcome as he chided Zhao Ying in the system space. He thrilled when he saw Zhao Ying's face. So system was satisfied too. How did it not think of doing this? Alas, humans were the ones who truly understood themselves. The handsome vigilante left, the gorgeous lady in his arms after they finished their meal. A heartbroken Zhao Ying stood in his wake. Throughout the rest of the day, the restaurant would maintain a 3-mile exclusion zone from the breakfast beauty as her rage oozed out of her like magma. Now, even a means to vent was taken away from her. Chapter 12, A New Age quietly arrives. I can finally continue my career in lining people up at the end of the barrel of my gun. thought Fang Ning after he finished helping the system with something major. His gaming mood came back, and he returned happily to the system cyber cafe to check on the video game he had been playing before this. He was delighted when he found out that he somehow won the round. Luck really did flock to the joyous. What? Who's this guy? He charged in like a boss with only a dagger equipped, and he managed to kill 7 people, the enemy's commander included. Damn. He opened the battle report, deciding to admire how amazing the Dagger Pro actually was properly. He glimpsed at the username, Ursula Forever, and offhandedly clicked on the conversation tab to chat with the pro. It didn't take him long to be dragged by the guy to another battle-oriented game. The worry that painted his face just minutes ago disappeared without a trace. So system would worry about everything anyways. I might as well just be an amateur strategist, Fang Ning thought as he played his games, moral principles long gone with the quick tap-tap of his keyboard. Hold up, pro, you hold down the fort for a moment, I gotta go to the toilet real quick. Don't give up, I'll come back in a minute. Fang Ning hurried himself off the new game not long after he started. The system options popped up again, and of course he had to stop. He still knew how to prioritize his things despite his love for games. His body, controlled by the system, was now at a secluded bosquet near the park. It was easy to obstruct line of sight here, and it was one of the places where lovers would frequent. Now, his body was facing a gorgeous woman. Both of them did not speak. Qian is asking for the compensation for her performance just now. Your options are, option 1, here is an incomplete version of the Baopuzi. It is now yours, and you would most definitely obtain the true Daoist inner strengths after you practice it. Option 2, let her choose from 3 types of martial arts, and automatically transfer her the knowledge: beginner knife art, chaotic mantle, beginner Qinggong, the rolling donkey, or basic internal strength, half-step jerk. Option 3, pay her RMB 10,000. The other party will refuse. What's the point of showing me an option that she would definitely refuse? Fang Ning lazily scanned the options, unamused that his gaming was interrupted. Without much thought, he picked option 2. The first option was indeed a genuine Daoist martial art, but the incomplete part the system talked about was fertility. Fang Ning was not as shameless as that yet. Hey, Vigilante, you're not thinking of running away, right? I, an honorable lady, actually sacrificed my beauty, reputation and image to act this scene with you. I wouldn't have rushed here on my car if you didn't promise to teach me beginner-level martial arts. Heck, I didn't even have time to put on some makeup. Our deal is not only to teach me, but to teach until I actually understand everything, okay? Qian, the beauty, shook one of her slender fingers at the man while she urged him. She was very anxious after she noticed how Fang Ning was responding extremely slowly. She thought, would this vigilante be similar to the elders in her family? To them, the martial art mantras were too valuable that they had a grip tighter than a vacuum over them. The last thing they would do was to allow others to learn them. Vigilante wouldn't be like that either, right? It was night time when she had first met Vigilante. He was hunting for thieves in her housing area, and she saw his abilities firsthand. Her knowledge of his case file serial number came from the old men from her family as they maintained contact with some of the people in the Special Affairs Liaison Office. Just as the beauty Qian thought that Vigilante was going to go against his words, Fang Ning suddenly levitated in front of her, just an arm's length away as he looked at her face to face. Ah! What are you thinking of doing? It's still broad daylight. Qian cut herself off by covering her mouth with her hand. Why did she use his pet phrase even in her protests? It must have been his fault. Choose one from these 3, and I will transfer the knowledge to you for you to understand the secrets within the martial arts. As a justice fighter, I always stick to my words. Fang Ning's face was stoic. He recited names of the 3 martial arts. The beauty's face darkened with every name she heard. This dude must be messing with her. However, when she took another glance at his charming face that remained absolutely serious throughout the encounter, she found a hard time believing that he was just fooling around. How did he manage to utter something so ridiculous while maintaining such a straight face? I choose option 3. Gritting through her teeth, the beauty finally gave in to the temptation that was martial arts. While she considered the numerous miracle products that were produced by some of the companies under her family after internal strength was introduced into the picture, she settled on option 3 after a long minute of consideration. Besides, the first 2 choices were too embarrassing for her to use, that she couldn't see herself using them even if she had managed to learn them. If she did, she would need to make sure that everyone present that witnessed the scene would never live to see the world, and she was not a murdering psychopath that would be able to do that every time. Fang Ning was speechless as he listened within the system space. Only the system would have had the audacity to pull something so heartless on such a beautiful lady. If it were him, he would never do anything close to that, even if she seemed to be asking too much for a small task. After all, a favor was a favor, and she did come to help the system. Eda resisted, and the system feel even a slight sense of guilt after it basically selling her out like that? Oh, of course it wouldn't. The sense of morality was still Fang Ning's. Why would the system even care about it? Good old system thoroughly ignored Fang Ning's whining. After Qian made her choice, it used Fang Ning's hand and slapped his palm onto her forehead. The movement was identical to when it was farming. The fact that there was a beauty in front of him didn't bother it at all. Thankfully, the system wasn't farming bad guys just yet, and Qian was still a beauty that remained standing. Before the rage bubbled from inside her, she suddenly felt an unexplainable warm stream of air flowing down from her forehead. Her heart practically leapt out of joy. Seems like this vigilante could still be trusted. How? That breeze flowed from her hair to her toes, filling her with warmth. It halted right in her chest, and seemed to settle there. Something felt off to the beauty, but she could not pinpoint the exact cause. Then again, she only occasionally heard about the basic knowledge of martial arts cultivation from those old folk at home. They only briefly talked about the topic and never did teach her anything, only reason being that she was destined to marry herself out of the family. Somehow, that made her an outsider. When the warm air had settled down, she saw Vigilante turn tail and leave, and a book suddenly sat on her palms. On the cover of the book was the word as basic internal strength, half-step jerk, written in simplified Chinese. She immediately flipped open the book in excitement, but when she finished reading the first page, she froze while red crept towards her cheeks. Then, she faced the direction where Vigilante took flight and bellowed. Vigilante, I thank you for your kind teachings. My entire ancestry thanks you for this. Don't you dare show your face to me again. System notification, Qian's aggro has exceeded known limits. Begin immediate extraction. Current aggro bar status, aggro bar 1 is full. Remaining aggro will automatically go to storage in aggro bar 2. Aggro bar 2 is now at 20%, it was amazing how they managed to accumulate that much aggro to fill up the initial 70% of aggro bar 1 and then start filling aggro bar 2, just by pissing off 2 women. It was no wonder people always spoke of not stepping on the tails of women. Only system, the fearless system with titanium balls, would have the guts to challenge the tipping point of all women in existence. Fang Ning shuddered. This was still a terrifying feat for a 28-year-old bachelor. Fang Ning decided that he shall remain single in the near future, until the system finally finishes cultivating its abilities. Thus, Fang Ning continued to binge novels and video games happily in the system's cyber cafe, while the system filled every minute with farming and cultivation. Fang Ning was only summoned occasionally to help accumulate aggro. On the other hand, Qian, who was quite cheated by the system, did not live her life as leisurely as those two. The beauty came from a historical, large family, and just like other similar families, they were quite spread out and no longer maintain close contact like the old times. Families like hers would only gather once a year when they needed to pray to their ancestors. Those times were when all the boasting and showing off happened, and while it was about riches and power in the past, now it had moved to superpowers and martial arts. Superpowers needed to be awakened before they can come into play, but no one really understood the pattern behind it. However, martial arts were here an entity since an eternity ago. It was just that their decades of training collapsed like dominoes in the face of a gun. A bullet was much more effective than any martial art. Thankfully, some martial arts still gave the cultivator an amazing physique, and maybe even a longer lifespan. That was something weapon handling could not provide. The Qi family was one of the few families that have a few martial arts that are taught from generation to generation, but they had not managed to acquire any outstanding achievements. Only the old folk in the family would see them as life preservation skills to train. At least they was better than the commercial fitness regimes out there. These few years, however, some of the old folk had managed to obtain internal strength while training in those historical martial arts. It was unheard of in their family, and some of the intelligent young ones within had managed to combine the internal strength with modern technology. This pushed their family business to the highest peak it had ever managed to reach, and now, with the family's business already at its new phase, the family members finally realized that a new age was about to arrive. This was evident in one of the Chinese medicine clinics her family owned. It had been open since forever. Prior to this, it had been slowly replaced by modern medicine, as Chinese traditional treatments only worked miracles on certain people due to age and niche. That was, until that old Chinese doctor in the family could finally see the nerves and vital channels that were written in the ancient books after he cultivated his own internal strength. One high-ranked officer managed to get his late-stage cancer controlled after the doctor combined the golden acupuncture guidance and internal strength as treatment. The officer began recovering gradually, and the news was a hot topic in certain circles. And that treatment? That was innovated by his grandchildren. Chapter 13, No More Farming. When this miracle that surpassed modern technology was laid out clearly before her, it was natural for the bright Qian to understand that the tracks for the future were shifting. The ones who do not possess these extraordinary powers would be eliminated, like the ones that were lost in the previous technological revolutions. They would only be able to struggle to survive from then on. The pressure to rise up again would fall on their young, but this time, maybe even the next generation couldn't do anything to change their lives, Qian thought. This was not like the technological revolution. Once you were gone, you were probably gone for good. This extraordinary power was not like technological knowledge that could be shared freely. Instead, this power could only be passed on to the new generation. Previously, there was always a possibility for one's offspring to climb up the social ladder, as long as they were relatively talented and were diligent enough to acquire the required skills and knowledge. At that time, no matter how rich a family was, they could only provide their children with the best learning environment. There was no way for any sort of direct transfer of information. However, that no longer applies to the present situation. She felt that this extraordinary power could probably be passed down the bloodline, as that theory was proposed by one of the most brilliant youths during the family gathering. Even though she desperately wanted to learn the martial arts of her family, in the eyes of the old, stubborn men, she was a woman that was destined to leave the household after marriage. Thus, she was never one of those who would be considered for the training, not even if her husband was willing to marry into her family. Even that was not believable, they said. Her parents loved their only daughter so much that they had sent multiple gifts to the elders, but all of that was in vain. Instead, they urged her to quickly marry, as they had already chosen quite a few young men that would probably do great in the new age. The new age is here, and some of the most ordinary men in her household had gotten the training from the elders. All of them did amazing in the training, which led their rise in status among the family. Their future, once dim, were now lit as bright as fireworks. How could Qian remain indifferent before all of this? She knew that she was better than any male in her family. Then, she managed to seize a rare chance to push that slightly cuckoo vigilante to give her a martial art of her choice. Initially, she thought that it was quite a good internal strength mantra, but once she read the internal strength scripture he gave to her, she nearly went crazy with rage. It was almost an achievement to the man, as it was very difficult to get such a conserved lady like her to lose her composure. It was evident how offensive the book felt to her. Even if she had had the scripture for so many days already, she hadn't even practiced once. That warm gust of internal strength that was from Vigilante remained curled in her chest, unmoving. Until this night arrived. Oh, Qian. Why didn't you contact Zhao Zeng after I introduced him to you? He's not our son, and even if you both share the same surname, he's so far removed that it doesn't matter anymore. blabbered Ki-Yan's second aunt. Besides, he would be willing to look beyond gender differences and teach you the martial arts in the family once you've married. How great is that? Your parents wouldn't need to go around begging people anymore. Her monologue broke into a series of disapproving clucks before she continued, "None of us could bear to see you and your family like that anymore. It's not that I'm trying to bother you, but a girl like you shouldn't be as hard-headed as a bull. Don't focus so much on success. After all, what could you do even if you've learned martial arts? It's not like you could join the men in their fights and battles, no. It's not like I'm begging for your help. Why are you so concerned about my business?" Ki-Yan grumbled in her head, but she forced out a strained chuckle to portray her feelings. The aforementioned guy was a nephew of her second uncle, but he was raised by her aunt and uncle like he was like their son. He was lazy and ugly, and had a cheap and boring personality. If Vigilante A was the sky, then this guy would be an earthworm living underground. Even though Vigilante A's choice of words were all kinds of ridiculous, but at least he was skilled in martial arts, and was easy on the eyes. There could be inexplicable joy felt by just looking at him. Most importantly, he wasn't a troublesome person. He didn't behave like most men when they saw her, showing off like a peacock whenever she was around. They were immensely annoying, and they stuck on like chewed gum. This second aunt of hers was the typical inflexible kind. Whenever she talked about martial arts, she would only think of the ancient assassins, heroes, and the likes. It never occurred to her that martial arts were at their most useful when applied with current gadgets and technology. After Ki-Yan managed to force-chuckle her extremely considerate second aunt away, she finally decided to fuck everything and start practicing. She could always choose to train on the darkest of nights. Come to think of it, tonight, being a cloudy, moonless and starless night where people wouldn't be able to see even their outstretched hands in the dark, was quite suitable. After she managed to cultivate her own internal strength and use that to earn good money, she could then buy herself a mansion, which would solve all of her problems once and for all. After she solidified her determination, the beauty Ki-Yan clenched her teeth in fury. "Damn you, Vigilante A," she growled in her heart, "don't let me find out that you taught me this kind of martial arts on purpose." You obtained aggro from Ki-Yan. Aggro bar 3 has filled up to 80%. Fang Ning was reading novels online when he saw another system notification. He temporarily moved his attention away from the text to look at the external environment via the system's view. The system had farmed its way to the Qi family's area. How many days has it been? To be fair, he couldn't exactly blame the beauty's grudge. It was the system that gave her such an unscrupulous scripture. At this point, he wouldn't be surprised if the girl would curse the system every time she trained. He did read the extract of the scripture, and the requirements for the half-step jerk was peculiar, to say the least. It differed from the usual meditative way of cultivation. Instead, it was based on the circulation around the acupuncture points at the chest, and would require the person to make rapid bounces at its execution. The faster the bounces go, the better the vital energy would circulate within the person's body. It would not be a problem if the person was a man, but when the person was a woman, it would seem to be quite inappropriate for onlookers. To Ki-Yan, this was naturally the Vigilante A's intention to purposely embarrass her, so that she could not be proud of this scripture in the family. As one of the few families within the Qi city that maintained their line till today, the Qi family has their roots deep within the ground, their branches spreading wide. They accumulated enough, and managed to ride the waves of change when the new age arrived. The new product strengthened the bonds within the family members, and their gatherings had increased from at most once a year to more than an annual meeting. And on those gatherings, there would be people who would boast about their superpowers or martial arts. Others would show off their new gadgets, and even though Ki-Yan seemed to be unaffected when she saw them, she was actually envious of her family members. What she didn't know was that even though the former would provide the person envious eyes and even higher status, the latter could easily attract some superpowered individuals that had an interest in illegal activities. That was why the system would always camp around the area, which led to her meeting Vigilante A. Now, she had no idea that Vigilante A once again appeared around her house, disguised and ready for action. The system came not to seek for girls, it came only to farm. Nowadays, the rumors and news had gradually increased in intensity, official surveillance became stronger in the area. Thus, the ordinary criminals spawned less than usual. Of course, as more and more people had awakened their abilities, the ones that had the guts to go about committing crimes were the ones that felt that they were special and stronger. The ordinary peacekeepers were not equipped to handle them, and the local special affairs did not have a coverage wide enough to cover the near million population in Key City. Even so, no one could stop the diligent system. Its tactics were clean and no nonsense, as it would never waste its time interrogating criminals. Aside from delivering some meaningless lines before it went down to business, the system would never start a second move if it could resolve the threat with one strike. Thus, the system had single-handedly caused a short crime vacuum in Key City, and despite the lack of public personnel, the city's public security had increased. These circumstances had caused most of the awakened to change their crime-making mind, and to declare their willingness to undergo the re-education program of the new age. No matter what, most of them were still registered citizens of the city. Other similar cities did not have the same luxury. With similar population counts, geographical environments and shortage of manpower in the Special Affairs Office, these cities were faced with uncontrollable chaos, which was a stark contrast to Key City. Apparently, Key City had received numerous recognitions and accolades because of this, and was named to be the model city for public security management in the new age. Sadly, that had resulted in low farming rates. In the past 2 days, the system had only managed to farm a few criminals, even if it traveled a significant distance. This had directly impacted Fang Ning's focus in his games, and instead, Fang Ning has tried to comfort the system by telling it that once the celestial weapon was completed, they would start to actively attract criminals, and there would no longer be a vacuum like this. Once it could continuously farm, its efficiency would most definitely increase. However, they still require more EXP to craft the celestial weapon. In an effort to gain enough EXP, the system intentionally delayed leveling up after it reached level 10. If that were not the case, it would have leveled up long ago. There was no question as to why the system would be so anxious about this. As it couldn't find the criminals, the system had no choice but to squat at the high spawn rate areas and wait for them. The Key family was one of its camping spots, and today, the system was back to camp. Of course, it would never waste its waiting time to stare at a smartphone screen. Instead, it used every second to meditate. Coincidentally, Fang Ning was currently getting scolded by a certain gaming pro due to him being a no-show and causing the latter to die in the most bloody way possible. Now, he no longer had the courage to log back into that particular game, and since he was not in the mood to explore other games, Fang Ning has resorted to passing his days by binge-reading novels. Thus, when he heard the system notification, he was fully prepared to come out and breathe some fresh air. If he were lucky, he might even be able to catch some great views during the time. The system was currently standing on the tallest building at the junction near Key family's mansion. It was a balcony of a 3-story building, and all the cottage houses at the nearby junction were populated by the Key family. These cottages were antique and unassuming, but everyone knew what it meant when these old homes survived the modernization of this overpopulated city. Soon, Fang Ning was able to locate Qi Yan through the system's view. She was now in a courtyard, looking very bothered indeed. Chapter 14. Here at last, even though the surrounding was as dark as the yawning grave, Fang Ning's vision was as clear as day from the system's view. Qi Yan took nearly half a day, burying herself in contemplation, before she finally took action. Suddenly, she started jumping in the courtyard. She looked somewhere between a jumping Chinese zombie or a dancing robot, which made Fang Ning sympathize with her. She was a beauty, but now she was a professional failure. It was unfortunate that he could not record while he watched, thought Fang Ning, entirely unabashed. Fang Ning only managed to watch for a short while before he heard footsteps. He was disappointed when he saw Qi Yan stop her actions. Then, someone spoke. "Yan, what exercise are you doing in the yard? The yard lights are broken, so be careful and don't hurt yourself in the dark, okay?" A man spoke, his voice gentle and warm. "It's fine, Dad. I'm feeling quite tired after reading, so I was just dancing a little bit." stretching about and all, you know. Qi Yan's voice was slightly tense and rushed. All right. I'll ask Wang Ma to get someone to fix it tomorrow. Don't get too tired from reading, okay? I'm here to talk to you about something. I'm listening. Qi Yan sneakily wiped the sweat forming around her forehead. Luckily, she paid enough attention to break the lights in the yard before she started her training. Else, she would have lost all of her image in front of her father by now. Tomorrow, a family meeting will be held again, and apparently the son of our clan leader, Qi Yi, would cooperate with the elders to release a type of pill, consisting of a multitude of rare herbs. Allegedly, internal strength can be stored and sealed within the pill, which would be immensely effective if it were used to suppress some chronic disease. They've only made 10 pills this time, and they're now looking for funds from the family. Aside from getting shareholders, they're looking to recruit members of the clan who possess internal strength to move towards mass production for market release. You should go and have a look. Here's some money for you to go and invest in it. After all, it's also something good the clan leader is doing for us. All right, father, answered Qi Yan, delighted. That young man was one of the most brilliant minds in the family, and was associated with quite a number of new innovations. Before this, she would look at them and their riches from afar, not bothering to care even if she were invited to join. Now, there was no need for her father to worry anymore. She now possessed the actual ability to join them, and no one would be able to gossip about her. In hindsight, that flailing was not much of a problem after all. The world has changed. There's no need for us to rush. Sometimes, it's better to take it slow, consoled her father, who understood her best. Fang Ning no longer had the patience to listen into their conversation. Instead, he quickly asked the system, "So system, was he speaking the truth?" "The truth is unknown," the system replied. "You can be less cryptic than that, really. Each individual's cultivated internal strengths have their own qualities, stemming from and being similar to the cultivator. It takes an immense amount of control for it to flow in another person's body without destroying the natural composition. If something went wrong, it would run rampant and damage the nerves and vital channels in the body. However, you humans are an imaginative bunch, and they might have used some herbs to neutralize the personal qualities sealed in the internal strength. It is a possibility that it might not harm the user, but there's no way to know how the internal strength in the pill could identify the illness without a guide." Fang Ning knew that even if the system was not very intelligent, it would not lie about anything. After he listened to its explanation, an idea occurred to him. Wait, why did you ask this out of the blue? For once, the system was smart about things. Oh, I'm just saying, because since you've been on standby for so many days, something that good would most definitely attract quality prey for you, right? Of course, it's still your call to make, blabbered Fang Ning. He was already very experienced in toying with the system. That's true. It seems like we'll need to stand by here tomorrow as well. Not long after their shared conversation, the system controlled Fang Ning's body and ran towards somewhere far away. Referring to the system map, Fang Ning spotted a blinking dark red dot, and judging from how dim it was, the prey was only as important as an ant. It was barely worth the trip, but to be fair, the system was starving. Just as the night falls on the next day, the system had Fang Ning's body squatting just outside the Qi family's house, his cover so perfect no one in the Qi family members spotted him. These people had smiles plastered on their faces as they greeted each other with their fist-wrapped salutes, their voices brimming with excitement. The system was excited too, Fang Ning even more, but it was for an entirely different reason. The system could not be less bothered by whatever the Qi family was showing off in their gathering. It was only interested in the possibility of a big shot showing up during the night. Fang Ning, on the other hand, was enthusiastically waiting for whatever spoils the system could reap tonight. The heavens do not disappoint those who yearn and desire. After a long wait, the system finally saw not one, not two, but 3 big shots appear just before midnight. Each of them pinged on the system map with shining red spots, and of course Fang Ning understood that they're not necessarily sinners, but that meant that they're worth a high enough EXP each as expected by Fang Ning. The system's disposition in conning the con man had caused it to hold the fort for now. However, the results this time were not as good as their previous experiences. Fang Ning checked the time, feeling utterly resigned. It was 2 a.m. already, but our beloved system had not farmed even one of the 3 big shots. It was controlling Fang Ning's body to go on a demented chase for this one thief who ran as fast as a bullet. He had a speed that could compete with the system's amazing King Gong. The perpetrator escaped the Qi family's mansion in the dark with the other 2, but he had no idea that the system was already onto their backs, waiting just nearby for them. These 3 were all superpowered individuals who just awakened their respective abilities, and were aware of the infamous Vigilante A. When the system continued with its standard-appearing procedure, the system ignored all of Fang Ning's hushed suggestions to ambush them as it thought that it might threaten its secret heroic identity. The 3 thieves escaped simultaneously before it could finish the daylight part of the sentence. In a flash, the system was 1 street behind. The fact that they could run so fast proved their worth in terms of EXP. The system map was accurate, so the system immediately launched into a full-fledged chase. Initially, Fang Ning did not think that it stood a chance of catching up, but he did not expect one of them to be extra. This thief was the fastest of the 3 and ran the furthest, but for some reason he slowed down purposely to let the other 2 leave while he stayed to play around with Vigilante A. And that was the reason why this dude was in literal shit right now. The 2 was engaged in the chase from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. God damn it, why are you still chasing me? Didn't I already throw the things to you? The thief in front turned to yell angrily while he ran past the alleys, his voice echoing in the night. The system remained silent and only powered on. Their distance seemed to be closer now. The thief was choked with rage. He knew that he will never be the hero's match if he went face first into a battle with him, so he could do nothing but to explode in power to increase the distance between them. Once again, he looked back to find the Vigilante A still maintain his steady stride. The hero followed him, as if the idea of giving up never crossed his mind. Fuck me, no wonder people said Vigilante A has a one-track mind. Which dynasty did you pop out of? What kind of freaking antique are you? Are you planning to chase me until the morning? The thief, Lua, could only blame his bad luck. He had a plan with 2 of his partner in crime to steal one of the new products exhibited in the Qi family. They planned to gain massive profit after they sold it to the family's competitor. One of them would be the eyes, another the stealing hand, and the last as the support. He was the stealing hand, and he had the most skilled within the team. Just as they happily escaped after they had successfully gotten the goods, thinking of the riches they would obtain from the steal, they were already watched by the Vigilante. Initially, he thought that since he was the fastest to evolve his superpower among the 3, and that his superpower was a speed-enhancing one, he must be able to devastate the famous Vigilante A with his skills. The latter was recently a hot topic within the circle of the superpowered in Qi City, and he thought that Lua could defeat him and leave him to stare helplessly as he left. Then, he would be able to boast about it in front of his 2 friends, and subsequently be the leader of the team. He would finally be able to realize a certain dream he had years ago. That was why he intentionally slowed down even if he already ran a safe distance from the hero. He allowed the other 2 to escape before him, and he stayed to distract the Vigilante A. And then, he found out that yes, his opponent's speed was no match for his, but he was not slow either. Additionally, he had a much stronger endurance than himself. Somehow, he would not lose his way either. No matter how many turns he made, Vigilante A would always locate the nearest shortcut at a moment's notice. If he didn't have some reserve energy that enabled him to have short bursts of speed, he would have been captured long ago. He knew the only outcome that he would face if this fellow managed to catch up to him. It would happen like how the other awakened had described, like how the surveillance footage had captured. He would get a palm from the Vigilante, collapse to the ground, and the special affairs would show up and drag his unconscious ass and file him in as an achievement. That had become one of the standard operating procedure of Qi City's Special Affairs Department recently. When it was clear that he could never escape this fate, he thought of an idea and pretended to throw the stolen good that he had spent much effort to steal. He actually threw a fake, but he thought that he could stall some time for himself. The result? Vigilante A did not even take a look at the fake he threw. Instead, the hero managed to get closer when Lua was busying himself with throwing. Alas, he had no other choice but to throw the real one. "Since you got the real deal, you should be satisfied and stop chasing me now, right?" thought the thief. "It's not like you're getting a single cent out of this, right?" The hero did spend some time to find the real good that he discarded. What Lua never imagined that when he was taking in much-needed oxygen, assuming that he finally escaped, the hero was back on his tail. And the most heartbreaking part? The chase was now at its second hour, and his legs were as heavy as lead. The only thing spurring him forward was inertia and his drive for freedom, but when he looked at the hero, he saw his opponent running as freely as he did 2 hours ago. Chapter 15, Never Forsake, Never Give Up. Mardar, NIUC, where are you two fuckers? Get your ass over here and help me distract some of the enemy's firepower. Help a brother out. Lua finally convinced himself to set down his ego as he snarled into the earpiece near his collar. He's calling for backup. We're having supper and enjoying our beer at the night market in the east suburbs. Lua, you said your superpower abilities had evolved until the second phase, and the idiot Vigilante A will never outrun you, no? Don't underestimate yourself and continue running. If you could shake him off tonight, then your name will be Ludar from now on, and I'll be Mardar 1. NIUC, and I will take you as our leader, and will listen to all your instructions in the future. He could hear his good friend Mardar's voice from the earpiece. I can't do this anymore. You'll be the leader, so come and save me quick, else I'll be dragged away by the Mythificas from Special Affairs when I'm unconscious. Lua panted heavily through the mouthpiece, as if he was moments away from collapsing from sheer exhaustion, hoping to get some sympathy from his mates. However, the reply he got from his friend was enough to plunge him into the hopeless abyss. NIUC, Lua probably can't make it anymore. After we finish our meal, we should really go and ask around to find someone who knows one of the fuckers in Special Affairs. We'll need to think of a way to get him out after some time, and I do hope that he wouldn't be changed entirely during the reformation program, though. His friends had no intention of helping him. Instead, they spoke as if Lua was already metaphorically died, and was now plotting for his funeral. Lua could only sigh and bemoan on how unwise he was when he made friends like these, which now had caused a downfall in his life. In a blur, he seemed to catch a glimpse of the full course of the Special Affairs Reformation program waving at him in the distance, telling him that it was free, and he should go as soon as possible. Oh, teachers are included, and did it mention that it also guarantees the participant a thorough understanding of the syllabus? Okay, that's the plan. Alas, you're still the leader that thinks holistically. As a brother of yours too, I'll need to pay respect to your leadership by having another drink with you. Cheers. Cheers. Lua finally realized that he was completely forsaken after he listened into the heartless conversation of his two shameless friends. When he turned to once again look at Vigilante A, he also understood what was the true meaning of never forsake and never give up. Back in the days, he had dared to play truant when he was only in grade 3, and had run from the back door of his classroom to the nearby cyber cafe. His class tutor had given up chasing him after just 200 meters from the classroom door, and had called his father to school. His father chased him through 3 cyber cafes before he too gave up. Then, his father had called for his mother. His mother literally couldn't care less. She only waited for him to come home when he was hungry, and had teamed up with Lua's father to perform a round of mixed doubles boxing on him. Their effort had lasted for only an hour before they were too exhausted to go on. During that time, Lua did not even gasp out in pain. That experience had taught him that every human's patience would have a breaking point, and he would be fine if he could endure it. Frankly, there was no fault in his theory. It was just that this time, his opponent was not a human, but a system that had taken over Fang Ning's body. If it were up to Fang Ning, the chase wouldn't have lasted for more than 10 minutes. Lua's endurance was nothing in front of a non-human. So system would finally have enough EXP after it farms you. It may be able to level up, even. Prey was difficult to come by, and the system has not gotten any sort of input for 2 days already. Why don't you tell me if it's possible for the system to give up on you?" At the same time, Fang Ning was happily reading his novels in the system cyber cafe while occasionally checking the progress of the long-standing chase. He could not help but feel sympathy for this thief that was nearly tiring himself to death. This situation finally came to an end as dawn broke. After Lua had repeatedly activated his superpower and squeezed out every drop of energy within him, he had collapsed out of exhaustion at 4 a.m. The two of them had been running for 4 hours straight, and had covered a distance amounting to countless marathons. If they were running in a straight line, they would have ran all the way to Tan State, a state that located at the far end of Key City. Lua felt a sense of relief when he collapsed. Vigilante A would probably not give him the infamous palm now, because he already had no energy to move in the first place. Sadly, reality laughed at his naivety when he saw a silhouette standing in front of him not long after he was sprawled on the ground. Who else would it be but Vigilante A? Lua immediately hung a forced cheerful smile on his face. Sir System, who finally caught up to Lua, was expressionless when he lifted Lua like a kitten and slapped him right on his cheek. Lua spun in the air for a whole 720 degrees from the sheer force from the impact, and he passed out before he hit the ground. He landed, face first, onto a fruit stall by the street, and was covered with watermelons, apples, and bananas. The scene was almost painful to look at. Fang Ning felt a ghost pain in his cheek while he watched on. The system never slapped someone in the face before while it was fighting for justice. Even if it were committing murder, it was only done by using a palm. It was evident how much the system hated Lua for decreasing his farming efficiency tonight. It had originally spotted 3 prey, but only got 1 4 hours later. Naturally, the system had looted everything from Lua. Before it left, he used the money he got from Lua to place RMB 1000 on that innocent but destroyed fruit stall as a form of compensation. The system finally left after he felt satisfied after checking the loot. Moments later, the rumbling of a motorcycle stopped some distance away from the scene. 2 men peeked from a corner, still gasping for breath. One of them had half of their body out to scan the area, and just as he was about to approach Lua, he was dragged backwards by another person. Soon, the low roar of a car engine was heard from afar. 3 black sedans appeared from the horizon and had stopped near the scene with a screech. Then, men clad in black uniforms spilled out of the cars, an emblem of sword and shield sewn on their clothes. They did not speak as they spread out to secure the perimeter. They investigated the area, and finally dragged a guy with a swollen cheek out from a pile of apples, bananas, and oranges. The other side of his face revealed a weird, frozen smile on his face, a contrast which had the capacity to send chills down anyone's spine where they had skillfully cuffed this person before covering his head with a bag. Someone finally spoke into a walkie-talkie. Target confirmed. Lua, codename Flying Squirrel. Current status comatose, suspected to be caused by excessive running and a heavy impact to the face. They hauled Lua's body up into one of the back seats of the sedan before driving off. After they left, the 2 people from the corner poked their heads out again to check their surroundings, before stepping out. They stared at the leaving cars and at the place where Lua previously laid. The spot was now empty. They shared a resigned look and sighed simultaneously. Leader Ma 3, it was just as you expected. These motherfuckers in special affairs were on our watch 24/7. If you weren't smart about this and lied even to Lua, we both would now be in the car too. What should we do next? What else could we do? That dumb bird Lua has been trying to take over my position and power. He messed up this time, and this might cause him to settle down for a while. Also, NIUC, did you have everything on record? Mahler spat, his words filled with hatred. Everything's on tape. These 2 could really run. We've been chasing them on the motorcycle and we're almost out of petrol. We can't be too close either. That Vigilante A might kill us with just 1 palm of his. Good. We'll be able to get some gas money back once we sell the recording to the Hummingbird. In the future, we'll tell Lua that his brothers weren't slacking, but his opponent was too strong, and had the endurance to run more than 250 kilometers. He could have burnt off all the petrol from our Harley 4, and not only that, the fuckers from Special Affairs were breathing down our neck. We had no other choice. Never could they have imagined that the system could run for a whole day without panting if it wanted to. At the same time, those that were called the fuckers of Special Affairs by Mardan and NIUC were also talking about this hero. I wonder what deep resentment the vigilante has towards this man. He actually chased him for 4 hours. I got exhausted just by watching the surveillance cameras. I really had to give it to him, his endurance is mind-blowing. Haha, I'm not surprised. It's not like you're uninformed about how patient the vigilante can be. One time, he waited at the market in the east suburbs for a day, and had managed to capture 21 pickpockets. Haha, this loser was unlucky today for him to meet an opponent this determined. His bad luck would continue, though. Lua and his people had been resisting the call for the reformation program, and had run from our capture numerous times due to their speed and familiarity with the area. We've spent much on them, but he had been lurking in the city, not doing anything big enough for us to give us our all, but still stirred shit up on a smaller scale. We finally got him unconscious today, and the old Manjang from the reformation program finally has another fresh blood to work on. Then, this slippery loser will finally know what never forsake, never give up truly means. Chapter 16, The System Isn't Afraid of Ghosts. The Special Affairs Department of Key City had their headquarters based in the mountainous area to the south of the city, within a hidden valley. The location boasted flowing rivers and a lush forest, but its scenic landscape did little in inviting visitors, as there was a garrison base nearby, rendering its surroundings a restricted area. The car escorting Lua rumbled along the road, passing numerous verification stops before finally reaching the compound. As if the verification stops weren't enough, they were met with a wave of procedures once they had arrived at the headquarters building. Finally, after a few personnel of the Special Affairs Department had spoken briefly to Lua, he was led to a room where surrounded by walls, and a wide window that faced the mountain. As they approached the heavily guarded entrance, they noticed a few people that stood in waiting. Lua could hear, from behind the great walls, muffled sounds of running. He could also hear the steady chanting of 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was followed by a different chant, led by one person before the rest echoed. Defeat all monsters, and all demons. Protect all humans, and the light. Maintain society's balance and order. Enjoy one's life, and one's freedom. Once Lua registered what was being chanted, a chill ran down his spine and he thought to himself, "Damned vigilante, I'll teach you a lesson once I get out of rehabilitation." Principal Zhang, we have one new student name, Lua. Initiating handover. The personnel in charge of escorting Lua bowed at an old man by the entrance before making his announcement. Lua's limbs were still bounded by handcuffs and shackles, and he didn't miss the snipers that were on duty around him either. He knew how it worked here. The official briefing he had received prior made it clear that if he were to run, he would only be offered 2 warnings before death. Lua knew that his abilities haven't evolved to the point where he was faster than a bullet, so he stayed put. He could only hope that the rehabilitation process was not as scary as Feng Niro had described. Feng Niro had told him that they used incredible education techniques here for rehabilitation. With a combination of isolation and electrical therapy and forced brainwashing, most superpowered individuals were engineered into model citizens of the new age here. They lost themselves and became peace-loving individuals that only knew to use their abilities for good. Lua felt that he would be able to resist, though. He had no interest in using his abilities for good, he just wasn't born that way. While Lua was lost in his thoughts, Principal Zhang gave him a once-over and smiled, before turning to face the personnel escorting Lua. What happened to his face? Was it another one of Vigilante's victims that you guys picked up? Following Vigilante was a good idea indeed, Principal Zhang. You have a good eye. Nobody from the Truth Department can compare with you, complimented the personnel as you flatter me. Sadly, my age was the cause of my rejection from their department. When are you lot going to be bringing Vigilante in for education anyways? Can't exactly let him do as he pleases outside. The Special Affairs Department personnel certainly wasn't expecting the question and hesitantly answered, "That would be difficult. We have nothing on him and haven't even come close to determining his identity. However, he has his own set of principles, so unlike the usual ones, he isn't much harm to society." He continued to explain the process that led to Luer's arrest, which included the fact that Vigilante A reimbursed a portion of the store's losses. Hearing so, Principal Zhang nodded his head and continued, "It seems that he isn't some youngster that hungers for his 5 minutes of fame. I've seen your reports on him. He's caught 723 criminals within these past 2 months, and although there were 8 counts of excessive defense, it was confirmed after that nobody was hurt. Am I right?" "Yes, your memory serves you well. Someone like this should be recruited into the Special Affairs Department, don't you think so?" Principal Zhang was befuddled. The personnel from the Special Affairs Department was at a loss for words. Principal Zhang was an upright and honest person, with no other way around it. He could only answer in honesty. "Apparently, the Truth Department has already evaluated his abilities. He is but a wuxia master with power level F. Maybe the higher-ups view his potential as limited." Principal Zhang shook his head in return and said, "A person's potential isn't determined so easily. From the way I see it, that director of yours is overthinking things. He must not want to take responsibility for the probability of Vigilante A not passing the first interview due to his unknown identity." Hearing somebody mention his boss negatively, the Special Affairs Department personnel immediately retaliated, "Principal Zhang, you can't blame Director Mo for not wanting to take responsibility. He isn't a genius, so he can't exactly get away with a lot of things. Don't you go thinking that he is peerless in Key City. Once the abilities of the Awakened Ones start developing, he would be defeated in no time. Take this flying squirrel as an example. When we arrested him, Vigilante A had already been chasing him for 4 hours before catching him. Even catching a flying squirrel like him required that much effort. This is after 2 months of effort. I'm afraid he'll only last another 2 more months at the peak. We have, in our records, awakened individuals that even possess the ability to kill people in their dreams. Once these awakened individuals grow into their abilities, how can he face them? HMMPH, what does he have to face? Isn't that part and parcel of your job? You bunch of people only want to use people to your advantage. Once they've lost their purpose, you throw them away without a care. You'll come to regret that one day. I'll be taking away Luer now, and you can come collect your backbone of society in 3 months, said Principal Zhang with a shake of his head before leading Luer away. The personnel could only agree to Principal Zhang's words, as he would rather not anger the elder. If that were to happen, he would probably be another Luer. Luer took 2 steps with his head lowered, feet dragging his shackles. Principal Zhang noticed Luer's difficulty in walking and pitying the boy, stretched a hand towards him. Suddenly, Luer felt a gust of wind. He then watched as his bindings disintegrate before his eyes. He immediately felt 10 times lighter, once again tasting freedom. That was when the weight of what had just happened dawned on him. Luer thought to himself, it was no wonder this seemingly harmless old man could be the principal of this entire rehabilitation process. From what he could do, it would seem that even Vigilante A wouldn't stand a chance against him. Principal Zhang observed Luer's shift in facial expression and continued walking in front of him, a profound smile on his face. Principal Zhang thought to himself, another one fooled. This trueness cultivation ability developed by the Truth Department truly is useful. Sadly, age has caught up to me, so I'm only able to wield it to this extent. Fighting with this would be impossible, but it's still good enough to scare youngsters. He thought. While people discussed the system's other identity, Vigilante A, Fang Ning however, was in the system space. He was sneakily going through the trophies that the system had obtained from serving justice just now. He examined the medicinal pill from the Key family in his hand, the gears in his brain turning. After the system had seized his body, Fang Ning had always been worried about one thing, but as the system wasn't exactly his aid and the thing was also quite troublesome, Fang Ning had never mentioned it. It was only after his position in the system's perception had increased and the system had recognized Fang Ning's value towards itself, did Fang Ning use the system to solve that particular thing. After having stared at the pill for a while, Fang Ning himself could also feel the weak internal energy being sealed in it. As compared to his own, it was incredibly weak. Although he spent most of his days gaming, whenever the system used his body for meditation, Fang Ning could feel the changes as well. He was more than familiar with things like internal strength and vital energy, especially with how the system constantly switched between the two. Fang Ning's familiarity towards internal strength was indeed quite deep. Sadly, Fang Ning couldn't do much other than that. He would only be able to see a reaction if somebody ate the pill, and whether or not it was useful couldn't be determined either. At least Fang Ning wasn't in a hurry to find out. Qi Yan's father had mentioned the other day that their family business would soon be distributing it into markets. If even Fang Ning, with his yearly income in the billions, wouldn't be able to afford the pill after it was available in markets, it wouldn't actually be possible for anyone to buy the pill at all. This was just a matter of how Fang Ning would persuade the system into using money. While Fang Ning was thinking about this, the laugh of a woman could suddenly be heard. He. I died so tragically. What the heck? That's some classic dialogue right there. Is something weird happening? After hearing that eerie voice, Fang Ning curled into a ball with fear. He looked around the system space and immediately ran towards the blacksmith's forge. The celestial weapon the system was currently forging was in it, and its majestic air provided Fang Ning with a semblance of security. Lord knew how afraid he was of ghosts and the like. When he had watched the movie about Sadako during high school, he couldn't sleep properly for a whole month and was afraid of even picking up phone calls. He was the joke of his peers for a whole year. After he was properly hidden, Fang Ning accessed the system's view to look at the situation outside. That was when Fang Ning noticed how dark it was outside. It was daytime, but instead of the morning light, their surroundings were replaced by green glimmers, akin to wolves' eyes, but which resembled will-o-wisps even more. Hey system, is it possible we're being haunted? Fang Ning was trembling as he asked. No. The system answered, tone nonchalant. That's good, breathed Fang Ning in a sigh of relief. There's no possible here, we are being haunted, corrected the system. Ah. Fang Ning immediately hid in the forge. What are you scared of? What's so scary about these ghosts and spirits? The roaming spirit can only cause confusion to a human being, nothing else. There's no point in us attacking it really. The system was quite confused at the behavior his host was exhibiting. Why would the host be afraid of a ghost? This ghost would be so much easier to defeat than the rabbit from before too. Chapter 17, Gaining the ability to kill ghosts too. Once the system finished saying so, Fang Ning felt a slight sliver of courage. However, when the true meaning of the system's words finally sank in, Fang Ning felt himself waver again. You said that this ghost can only mess with a person's thoughts. So when can it actually injure a person directly? From the extent of its evolution, as well as the speed the environment is shifting nowadays, I would say give or take 2 months, given that nothing special happens. The system walked on ahead calmly, not at all affected by the ghostly wails and surroundings. Although it was extremely dark around them, the system didn't seem the least bit affected at all. Shit, wouldn't that mean trouble in the future? Fang Ning couldn't help the worry that bubbled within his chest. Ghosts and humans were inherently different beings. Humans could still be taught, but who has ever heard of a ghost being taught? Once it goes chaotic in the future, Fang Ning was afraid that not only would his restaurant chain be greatly affected, the online novels that he were reading and video games that he were playing would be too. With the society in fear, nobody would even think to update their novels or to maintain their video game servers. Once the thought of his daily life being smashed to smithereens surfaced, Fang Ning's fear was replaced by worry instead. He couldn't help it. He didn't mind not reading his online novels or playing his video games for a couple of days, but any longer than that and he would definitely die of boredom. Especially now that he was rich, the system didn't mind that Fang Ning would use a bit of the money to spend on his video games. For the first time in his life, he finally understood the true meaning of paying to win in video games. Of course Fang Ning knew his limits. He knew that once you started spending insane amounts on video games, there was no turning back. However, Fang Ning is used to self-control. He was still seized by the system, and he had been long used to saving money. Now that he had so much, he just couldn't resist spending a bit, but a bit was all he was spending. Fang Ning suddenly came to the realization that a homebody like him was also starting to worry about his country and its people. He found himself quite funny, but he knew that in such a convenient society, convenience for every person depended on another person. At this moment, the ghost that had been ignored by the human and the system started growing restless. She had been doing her best to maintain the scary surroundings, but all she got in return was ignorance. She was angry. How dare they ignore her? How dare they just ignore her hard work? Did they really think she was harmless? You just attacked my brother and now you want to just leave? She hadn't planned on showing herself to them, content with just maintaining the eerie atmosphere, but she was furious now, and so she appeared before them in red, her tongue hanging long out of her mouth, her nails long and covered in blood. Fuck! Fang Ning screamed in horror, thankful that he was in the system space, so he only felt like he had seen a scary GIF. The advantage of having his body seized by the system was that thankfully, the system maintained his body in check, he wasn't peeing his pants, his heart rate wasn't increasing. If it weren't for the system, he doubted that any human being would be able to survive such a shock. Get out of the way. The system was growing impatient. It could accept adding sound effects in the background, but now the ghost was trying to block its way. It could stop the ghost, but blocking one's view was borderline annoying. With a grand swing of its hand, the system sent out a long, dragon-shaped flame that went flying towards the ghost. Ah! Ah! The ghost flew upwards into the sky, its wails 10 times louder than Fang Ning's previously, before it dissipated into thin air, its wails distant. In an instant, the will-o-wisps and the eerie atmosphere disappeared, and the street returned to its usual state. The morning sun shone down softly on them and there were even a few people in the distance, preparing for their morning exercises. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Fang Ning, who was previously seeking refuge in the system's space, quickly emerged to view the new notifications. It had gotten to a point where he usually would just ignore the notifications that pop up, but with the appearance of a new enemy, a ghost, the notifications are a must-see for Fang Ning. Female ghost by the name of Zhu Sanwei attempted to attack the system using a body double. The system used the esoteric skill Flame Dragon's Celestial Punch, 1 aggro bar depleted. The third aggro bar has dropped to 0 points. First and second aggro bar remain at 100 points. Female ghost Zhu Sanwei suffered a critical attack with the Yang attribute 1 and was suppressed by Dragon Force. Defense ignored. Female ghost Zhu Sanwei received an attack of 1,400 points. Female ghost Zhu Sanwei's double was entirely destroyed. The main body has suffered a fatal attack. The system has received 50 experience points and is 63,455 experience points away from level 11. E-grave only 50 experience points. It was no wonder the system was reluctant on attacking the ghost after defeating a bigger monster. However, Fang Ning still felt slightly confused. Hey, system, why did you waste 1 aggro bar on some ghost? I thought you were going to save your esoteric skills for the enemies that would appear after the celestial weapon was done. He knew that the third aggro bar was almost full, and after chasing Lure for 4 hours previously, it had been topped off completely. Oh, you really do get on people's nerves. Aggro can be extracted very easily, so I decided to test out my skills. Using some average skill to defeat that ghost wouldn't be enough to teach it a good lesson. Sadly, it was worth so little experience points, so it was definitely just a puppet. I get on people's nerves. Isn't it just because you need aggro? Of course Fang Ning would never say that out loud. He would never treat the system with disrespect. Especially now that all kinds of monsters and demons were appearing, he mustn't do anything too hasty. It made sense to Fang Ning now, as to why the system was working so hard to train previously. If it hadn't been level 10 just now, it wouldn't have been able to use an esoteric skill. Without the skill, the ghost wouldn't have been defeated so easily and would have instead latched onto them. The system might not care about that, but Fang Ning probably would have lost his mind if that happened. puppet or whatever, it really is none of my business. At least I have a peace of mind now, so if you have anything you want to order me to do, go on ahead and give that order, said Fang Ning, finally at ease and void of fear. The system took care of such a scary ghost with a swing of its hand, so Fang Ning had nothing to worry about. There is one thing though, Lua was defeated earlier, so we now have enough experience points to imbue the celestial weapon with a special ability. What function do you think would attract the most criminals? Asked the system without hesitation. Fang Ning had expected that question sooner or later, and so he answered instantly, of course it would be the ability to maintain eternal youth and to be immortal. Awakened criminals would undoubtedly be courageous in climbing to the peak of the criminal world. To these people, money and beautiful women would be easy to obtain. Immortality and eternal youth, however, have always been the two things that humans always lusted after since the dawn of time. The West has tales of fountains offering eternal youth, the East has legends of herbs offering immortality. Why do you think that is so? You're not wrong. However, imbuing these two abilities requires experience points that I do not have, so you'll have to lower your demands. Then only abilities like longevity or extreme power will be able to attract people. That would be easy, but we cannot grant them extreme power. But of course, if their powers were to increase dramatically, then there's no point to us forging a celestial weapon anymore. Alright, I'll be able to imbue the ability of longevity into the celestial weapon within these few days. What appearance do you think the celestial weapon should take to make it the most attractive? We have to take in the fact that we want to attract monsters from all around the world. So it would be best to combine Western and Eastern elements, so that even foreigners would recognize its prowess. Gold has always been seen as a treasure since the olden days, so make it a golden, suggested Fang Ning. Alright, noted. What? Vigilante destroyed your life-saving double with a single skill? And now even your true body is starting to break down? In a bleak-and-eerie residential area somewhere, a man with a sinister face was speaking to the ashes in an urn. Yes, master. He was too powerful. I've never seen a skill like that, and it seems to be extremely effective towards ghosts and spirits. There was no way of avoiding it at all, a woman's voice answered weakly from within the ashes. Shit. That Feniro gave me unreliable information. He told me that Vigilante was just a wuxia head with limited potential and had a power level of F. What bullshit. I wasted 200,000 for nothing. The sinister-looking man spat angrily. Suddenly, he realized that something was wrong and immediately questioned, didn't I only order you to follow him? Why did it escalate into a fight? The woman hesitated before answering. I thought that since Master wanted to recruit him in, I thought I could maybe test his skills. Who told you to do as you please? Scolded the man immediately before going. I'll only tend to your wounds after 3 days, so enjoy the pain. No, Master. I don't think I'll be able to last that long, wailed the woman in pain. Her true body was experiencing a terrible pain, like she was being operated on without anesthetics. She didn't want to stand the pain even for a second longer. HMPH. You deserve it. You better stop doing things before I specifically ask you to. I am the only person in this entire world that can keep you alive. Don't think I didn't know, sneered the sinister-looking man. He covered the urn once again and put it into a box made of sandalwood. The woman's cries of pain could no longer be heard, but the man's eyebrows were still scrunched together. Chapter 18, Fulfill Your Destinies. I'll just stay put. The sinister man continued to ponder for a while longer before he moved into a basement. There was but a lone memorial tablet in the room, and the words written on it were illegible. He lit a stick of incense from the altar table and stuck it into the incense burner in front of the memorial tablet. The incense burned for a short while, before the smoke from it materialized to show the bust of a young man. GUIK, is there already progress so soon? Hearing the young man speak, GUIK immediately knelt to the floor to bow. Master, your servant has had quite the bad luck in Key City. While I was recruiting people, my only spirit servant was attacked fatally. I'm afraid that would slow Master's plans to a standstill. I am willing to bear my punishment. Hearing so, The young man showed no sign of anger and instead, interest took over his features. Oh, your spirit servant was highly qualified. She even had a life-saving double. Common awakened individuals wouldn't have been able to defeat her. Did you somehow anger people from the truth department? The sinister man shook his head immediately. I wouldn't dare go against Master's wishes. My spirit servant had acted of her own will and had caused a conflict with the person that I wanted to recruit. Tell me more. The sinister man then proceeded to relay the events in detail. Once the sinister man had finished speaking, instead of reprimanding him, the young man spoke with glee. Who would have thought that a place like Key City, with its simple folk, would have been hiding such an awakened individual who possessed passion and skill? He should definitely be recruited so that he can be my heir. As expected of Master. Your humble servant had thought the same. Once I had found somewhere to stay, I had immediately started the recruitment process. Who would have known that my spirit servant would think otherwise? She had attacked that person to avenge her living brothers, which is causing a problem now. This can only be blamed on you. These spiritual beings have fickle personalities and have strong ties to their previous lives. They are beings that are hard to control as they tend to act as they please. Which is specifically why I want to rule the underworld so that I can bind them, so when the future shifts, they wouldn't go around attacking the common people and causing chaos for the living. Hearing so, the sinister man once again bowed his head. Master is still thinking of the common living. Master is a blessing, as if Buddha himself had walked among us. Haha, aren't you good at compliments, Guik? As if satisfied right after saying so, the young man made a pill drop out of the smoke. Seeing the pill made the sinister man's heart pump with glee, but he remained still. The young man seemed even more satisfied as he continued, give this Ghost Emperor pill to your spirit servant. You must treat her with honesty and remember not to give in to the dark. As an exorcist, one must be just so that one will not walk towards the unjust. Your humble servant will remember Master's teachings, obeyed the sinister man. All right, we have spoken too long. The truth department has already thrown its web. Speaking too long would reveal us. You must be extra careful, and remember not to give in to greed that will satisfy only you. With that, the young man disappeared and the smoke slowly dissipated. Guik waited until the smoke had entirely disappeared before picking up the Ghost Emperor pill, standing up as he did so. He smirked and whispered to himself, not to give in to greed. Ha, don't make me laugh. It's a world where each person only thinks of himself. Whatever, I'll only have to temporarily please you for the time being. Nobody knows what the future holds yet. But this Buddha did hold quite a lot of advantages, and here I thought I had to help heal that spirit servant again. Whatever, since that vigilante isn't an easy feat, it would be better to find an investor first. He looked around the small, damp basement and furrowed his eyebrows as he thought to himself, why do I have to spend my days cramped up in here when I have so much power? Where is my mansion, my car, my women, and money? Why can't I do as I please? HMPH. In the system space, Fang Ning looked at the metal hammer that was moving on its own on the blacksmith forge. It hammered away at the weird-looking celestial weapon. Fang Ning wasn't afraid of it. He knew it isn't the work of some ghost, but was instead the system working on the celestial weapon. The system couldn't exactly show itself since it probably didn't have a physical body, but it could use anything in the system space as it pleased. Fang Ning got bored after staring at it for a while. He couldn't exactly go back to reading his novels or playing his games in front of the system either. And so Fang Ning went online to look at recent news, both local and international. These past 2 months seem to have changed the outside world a lot. Sightings of a ghost in broad daylight? Was the light playing tricks or did it really happen? The title alone seemed to be akin to the ghost flicks Fang Ning used to watch. Once he clicked into the article, he found out that some place in the south had numerous reports of ghosts attacking humans incessantly. It was only until recently, that after someone heard an explosion in broad daylight, did the attacks finally slow down. In regards to recent events, if it seemed like the locals weren't faring well, it seemed to be worse internationally. Japan has been covered by a fog for 3 days, the entire country has been affected. The ports have closed and flights have been grounded. Relevant authorities have released red alerts warning citizens not to visit Japan for the time being. A group of witches has surfaced in northern Russia. The members of the cult seem to all suffer from speech disorders and have all been arrested by the country's Special Operations Department. Fang Ning felt immensely troubled by these developments. He hated situations of major chaos the most, as that meant his peaceful life as a homebody would be affected. Thankfully, Key City still seemed relatively peaceful. Nothing too serious has happened yet, and that of course had to do with the system that had seized his body. When war-loving awakened individuals cropped up, the system had taken care of them, and they were whisked away by the Special Affairs Department for rehabilitation. Now that Fang Ning thought about it, being a homebody wasn't all that bad. He could live a carefree life without much worry, as well as not attract too much attention to himself. Nobody had popped up on his doorstep to look for him yet. What Fang Ning didn't know was that not only had he received a lot of attention, he was already a role model amongst the other awakened individuals. There was barely any awakened individual that didn't know of him in Key City. Meanwhile, at the rehabilitation center of the headquarters of Key City's Special Affairs Department, Principal Zhang was speaking to a bunch of awakened individuals in class. You lot have a lot to learn from Fang Ning. Don't think that our department is just pulling all awakened individuals in for rehabilitation. If you're thinking that, well, think again. Lu looked at Fang Ning's picture that was displayed, his lips pulled into a tight line. Fang Ning was but a lazy asshole that stayed at home all day. He would have probably spent his entire life being a homebody even if he was brainwashed. Fang Ning has only used his ability to earn money. Who are we from the Special Affairs Department to stop him? He spends his days working from home, so who are we to bring him in for rehabilitation? All of you are here for a reason, so reflect on your actions that brought you here. Some of you were caught while committing a crime, while some of you were caught while preparing to commit a crime, some of you have even committed multiple crimes and had resisted the law. Just because you can run fast, that doesn't mean you can be a thief. Luo felt a sense of dread as Principal Zhang finished his speech. And that dread was right as Principal Zhang called on him to stand. Luo, stand up and share your ability and crimes with the rest. I was wrong. Instead of using my super speed to commit thievery, I should have used it for peace and to join the national team, so that I can develop our country's track and field prospects and lead us to the Olympics. After Principal Zhang's enlightenment, I have utterly regretted my actions and changed for the better. I promise to be a better person in the future and will work hard on improving myself. No, I meant I will work hard on protecting the world. Luo rubbed at the corner of his eyes dramatically after finishing. Although his face was one of seriousness, he thought to himself, who would want to be an athlete? Not only would I have to practice under a coach every day, it's not like I want to be famous. If it weren't because of Vigilante A, I could have sold it medicinal pill for 30 million through Feniro. I would have earned more in a day than someone would earn in a year. It's good that you think that way. However, the International Sports Organization is recently undergoing some changes, so you've missed your chance. They are already coming up with a sports event that only awakened individuals can participate in, as they are preparing to separate the sports competitions between common people and awakened individuals. You better start training now so that you can compete in the sports event and bring glory to our country. Yes. As expected of Principal Zhang. I will work hard in training so that I will not let our country down, agreed Luo half-heartedly. After spending several days here, Luo was quite aware of Principal Zhang's temper. The ultimate combination in their rehabilitation process was isolation, plus electrical therapy, plus forced brainwashing. Whoever went against Principal Zhang would have to endure all three, whoever listened and obeyed well would only have to endure half, and whoever proved themselves worthy would not have to endure anything at all. That electrical therapy was quite terrible, thought Luo to himself as he rubbed his behind. He still got shivers every time it crossed his mind as he was almost burnt alive. Chapter 19, Why are you eating meat while I'm eating bread? Why are you prospering while I'm suffering? All right, relief time, No, I meant it's recess time. Since everybody was paying so much attention in class just now, I want everybody to write an essay after class. The title is, What is True Happiness? After Principal Zhang was finally done with his first class of the day, everyone in the class evidently relaxed, as the worst part of the day was finally over. They couldn't help it, having to expose their histories and where they did wrong as well as what they were planning to do in the future in front of an entire class was no easy feat. By the way, the ones that performed exceptionally in class are allowed to call their family. It'll be good to give them a peace of mind. It's allowed because it's the first time you lot are allowed a phone call. The next time won't be so easy, continued Principal Zhang, offering his mercy. Principal Zhang was in a good mood, you see. Other than a few that he couldn't read at all, most of the awakened individuals in class seemed to be deeply regretful of their actions. It seems that Fang Ning seriously was quite the role model. Of course, the 3-course rehabilitation meal played a part too. Lua, Feng San K. Principal Zhang called a few names and gave them a time period of 20 minutes for their call, with supervision of course. When Lua heard his name, he was elated. Who knew that old man still had a bit of conscience left in him? Looks like the speech he spent 2 days memorizing was not for naught. He finally had the chance to vent his pent-up anger on those 2 bastards. He would spend his call scolding his so-called best friends and breaking off their friendship. They would be friends no more. Instead of helping a comrade that was being chased, the 2 of you spent the whole night drinking and eating to your heart's content. Your sworn brother spends his days eating bread and drinking bland soup in here, while you both must be eating high-quality meat right now. He thought. Hello, it's NIUC. Who is this? Oh, second brother. Why are you calling? Did you manage to escape? NIUC was still clouded with sleep when he picked up the call, but once he recognized the caller his mind immediately cleared. Boss ma. It's second brother calling. NIUC rushed to a door immediately and began knocking on it rapidly. Stop with that knocking. It's only 8 in the morning. It's not every day that we get to sleep in, so why are you making a fuss? Did we use all the money we got from selling those videos and information? Ma Da yawned, his mouth going wide. Despite hearing his brother's desperate calls, he got dressed slowly while a woman with heavy makeup slept on soundly next to him. No, boss. It's second brother calling. Shouted NIUC in desperation. Ma Da's head was still foggy with sleep, and so he slightly shook his head to clear his mind before opening the door. The first thing he saw was NIUC's distressed face, the mobile phone gripped tightly in his hand. Give me that. Shouted Ma Da as he grabbed the phone from NIUC. He spoke into the phone immediately. Hey, second brother. Did you escape? We're still not done with preparations over here. Escape my foot. Ma Da, NIU, you 2 heartless and disloyal traitors. I've finally seen through you both as people who ignore their fallen comrades. We are no longer brothers from now on. Without waiting for Lua to finish, Ma Da immediately shouted abuse into the phone. No longer brothers my foot, how many times do you want to break off our brotherhood? I know that you're simple-minded, so don't use your brain too much. NIUC and I did plan to save you, but we failed. However, we managed to get quite a decent recording of what happened, so you shut your trap. I'll send the video to your QQ. After clearing the misunderstanding between him and Ma Da, Lua had also asked for Ma Da to send him some money. With the phone call behind him, Lua's body pumped with energy and his eyes glimmered with hope. Even the bland soup and plain bread they would be having for lunch seemed to smell particularly good. While the fragrance of food wafted around the canteen, Lua devoured his 4th plain bun. Suddenly, the screen in the canteen wavered to show an image of a private room in a restaurant. Lua didn't pay it any attention at first, but when he heard the sounds of eating around him slow down, he finally looked up. Once he registered the image, Lua bit into his lip. Principal Zhang really was a man without a conscience, as he was still educating them despite it being mealtime. The image on the screen only showed a solitary figure in the room. and that figure belonged to a person that Luo has gotten to know quite well these past few days. It was the man that Principal Zhang had reiterated time and time again as the role model of superpowered individuals, but Luo only viewed him as a useless bastard. From the subtitles on the screen, they were apparently watching a live broadcast. Luo can't believe they would broadcast someone eating just for the sake of educating them. As he continued watching, Luo noticed that the camera was slowly zooming into the automatic turning tray on the white table, with the person sitting at the table only appearing a couple of times. On the white table was a huge variety of delicacies, from the freshest of seafood to the most expensive of meat. There was soup, vegetables, fish, beef. The table had everything you could think of. Steam was still rising from the freshly cooked food, and the glimmer on the food alone told of just how good it must taste. The person's satisfied expression every time he took a bite of the food couldn't be fake either. Luo looked down at his plain bun, with its cold crust. He suddenly found it very hard to swallow, as anger bubbled at the pit of his stomach. If Luo somehow found out that this man enjoying a delicious full-course meal and the man that had put him into this place were the same person, the anger that he felt would probably be amplified tenfold. You've extracted aggro from Luo, you've extracted aggro from Feng Sankei, you've extracted aggro from XXX. Third aggro bar currently at 100/100. As the notifications continued popping up, Fang Ning, who was enjoying his meal in the VIP Crown private room of the restaurant, immediately knew that the Special Affairs Department was secretly broadcasting him eating again. All the aggro was also probably extracted from the students in the rehabilitation center. Fang Ning had found out from the system that the Special Affairs Department had installed various cameras in his restaurant to monitor his daily life. He was just acting as if he had no idea. To give those people a peace of mind, and also to draw a clear line between him and Vigilante A, Fang Ning was more than glad to let them monitor them, as long as it satisfied them. This was why Fang Ning had decided to eat at his restaurants. Besides, the kitchens at the restaurants were all bigger and more equipped than the kitchen at his house. It was also easier to get ingredients through the restaurants, so the system had decided it would be more efficient to cook from here, and easier to get an apprentice at the same time. Thankfully the Special Affairs Department knew to at least help Fang Ning save some face, as they hadn't installed any cameras in his home. If that had happened, Fang Ning would have to hire a few bodyguards to check the cameras, as he wouldn't exactly be able to use the system to check on them. Besides, it wouldn't exactly be a good idea if his ridiculous antics during relief time were broadcasted live. Fang Ning wasn't worried about being recorded. His conversations with the system all took place within the system space anyways, so there really was no chance of the system being exposed. And so, Fang Ning sat there and peacefully enjoyed the meal prepared by the system, all under the watchful gaze of a huge group of people. The advantage of doing this didn't stop there, either. If the Special Affairs Department had decided to broadcast him eating to the students at the rehabilitation center, it would always anger a few people. It was no wonder the system depleted the aggro bars as it pleased, seeing as how it could be refilled so easily just from being broadcasted eating. Fang Ning had asked the system once on the aggro extractions radius. The system had just simply answered that it could extract aggro within its map. It was obvious now that the map must cover an extremely wide area. The broadcast could only show physical appearance, and not the contents, of things. If the people watching could also see contents, their jealousy would only be amplified. The dishes in front of Fang Ning were not only all made from the finest and most expensive of ingredients, the skill involved in preparing them was top-notch too. How much did you think a meal like this would cost? 3,000? 5,000? Not including the system's labor put into cooking the food, the ingredients alone for a single dish would already cost 3,000 to 5,000. The entire course cost between 70,000 to 100,000. If you include breakfast, 3 meals a day would cost Fang Ning 300,000. It was obvious that a great part of Fang Ning's monthly income of 20 million went to food. Of course, all the money spent on food wasn't for nothing. According to the system, eating all those herbs and expensive ingredients would improve his health, as it would gradually enhance the properties of his bones and nerves, thus allowing him to save on the precious attribute points that only increased 1 per level. Furthermore, his organs would also be strengthened too, which in turn would slow down the breaking down of his organs. Sadly, Fang Ning himself couldn't actually feel all the positive effects on his body. Maybe his body really was changing for the better, but Fang Ning couldn't exactly see any obvious improvements to himself. The system would never lie to him though, so Fang Ning could only come to a conclusion that the changes would only happen after he had been eating those ingredients for a long time. However, there was at least one advantage that he had already obtained. After Fang Ning's persuasion, instead of before, when it had eaten its own cooking, the system had allowed Fang Ning to eat its cooking instead now. At least Fang Ning could now finally enjoy the amazing taste of the food entirely. The suggestion Fang Ning had given actually went like this: since you can't actually taste the difference in taste, allow me to handle the food, at least while I'm doing so, you can train instead. Fang Ning had spoken with so much confidence that the system couldn't rebuke at all. It couldn't exactly ask Fang Ning to cook in its stead either. Since Fang Ning himself didn't have the system's cooking skills, no matter how expensive and exquisite the ingredients were, Fang Ning's cooking would probably only be able to bring out 1/10 of the enhancing properties of the ingredients. As Fang Ning gradually finished his full-course meal, he still felt that he could eat more. As for the people watching his live eating broadcast, the anger that they felt for him could make them explode with rage. Although some of them have seen him eat a few times, it didn't help in dispelling their anger at all. As Luo watched Fang Ning eat, the rage in his stomach boiled on. He finally knew how to answer Principal Zhang's homework: true happiness is simple. It is when you eat meat while I eat bread, when you prosper while I suffer. He swore in his heart that once he left this god-forsaken place, he would make himself the most famous track and field athlete for one reason and one reason only, so that he would be able to eat for the rest of his life what Fang Ning was eating right now. Luo of course didn't know that even if he succeeded in his goal, it would not be possible to achieve that, as Fang Ning was the only person in the whole world who could enjoy the system's cooking. Chapter 20, Be prepared for anything and everything. The next day, Luo finally grasped the return of his own happiness. Luo, somebody has sent some money for you, come sign and receive it, shouted the instructor, with a medium-sized leather box in his hands, towards Luo, who was busy doing push-ups. Looks of envy are thrown towards Luo. To have money delivered now means that the money in the leather box must be no small amount. Their envy was not unexplained. Because of the terrible service at the canteen here, the majority of people who had entered early had already long spent all the money they had brought with them or had gotten delivered to them. They now lived their lives eating free bland buns and soup. This sudden awakening of power had caused a lot of them to be depended on by their family and relatives to earn big money. However, most of them entered this center not just without earning any money, but also with major debts on their shoulders. With shame hanging like a cloud over them, most couldn't ask for money from family members anymore. The envious looks fell on the leather box instead as the people around Luo started guessing how much money it contained. It wasn't big enough to contain 500,000, but it could definitely fit 100 to 200,000, which was more than enough to get decent food here for 3 months or so. The canteen here was a canteen that could produce any type of food, as long as the ingredients could be obtained legally. The rehabilitation center was emphasizing the importance of living by the rules, you know. Under the envious looks of the rest, Luo walked towards the instructor with his chest outwards. As he enjoyed the envious looks he was getting, he thought to himself, there's no point in being envious, not everybody has 2 sworn brothers living the life on the outside. I can finally eat some good food today, and I finally don't have to suffer by watching that live broadcast again. Luo reporting, instructor, spoke Luo aloud, his tone clear as day and loud as thunder. Receive your leather box after signing. Without batting an eye, the instructor passed a piece of paper and a pen towards Luo after putting the leather box down. Yes, instructor. Luo obediently signed his name onto the paper, purposely taking his time while doing so. After the instructor had left, he immediately opened the leather box. Nobody would dare commit robbery here anyways. The opening of the box was only met with thunderous laughter, however. The few that had wanted to borrow some money from Luo were of course disappointed. Fuck! Exclaimed Luo in disappointment as he looked at the clothes in the leather box, which included a thick wool jacket for winter. After sifting through the clothes, Luo finally saw the small stack of bills at the bottom of the box. He counted the bills to calculate the amount, which only made him angrier. "Mada, say goodbye to our sworn brotherhood. When I told you to send some money, I wasn't asking for a mere 1,000. Why did you send so many clothes instead?" Luo was furious. While he berated Mada, his tight grip on the stack of bills never loosened. 1,000 wasn't a lot. If Luo was outside, he could survive a month or so on fast food using 1,000. Key City was just a second-tier city after all. But in this rehabilitation center, the canteen was practically committing daylight robbery, charging around 50 for just a plate of stir-fried vegetables. If they wanted something slightly better, it would cost 200 to 300 a day. If they wanted to upgrade even higher, Luo's 1,000 would be gone in a day. It wouldn't even give him a full table of dishes like he would get outside, but rather only a few plates of dishes. In short, Mada had only given him enough for a day of lavish spending. Luo still had to spend the next 3 months in here, and he had no idea when he would be getting his next phone call. This meant that he would still be eating his plain buns and drinking his bland soup with only the occasional extra plate of stir-fried vegetables. Wow, boss, you're quite thoughtful. Now that the weather is getting colder, you've purposely bought so many clothes for Luo to survive the winter. With a whole box of clothes, you've really helped Luo be prepared for anything. I can't do that much, all I can do is give him some money. Luo would definitely feel touched after seeing this. Although we've both lost our parents and Sanmai who sacrificed herself saving us, at least we still have you, boss. Under Niuc's touched gaze, Mada waved his hand in dismissal of Niuc's words. He then said, "What's with all that? If I don't take care of you lot, how am I to explain myself to Sanmai when I pass away? Since that center is used for rehabilitation and education, I'm sure he won't starve to death. But who would care about what he was wearing when awakened individuals have a better physique that won't allow freezing to death? That doesn't mean that they have to endure the chill. You're right, the chill in Key City is no joke. But now that we've bought so many clothes for Luo, the money we have left won't be enough for us to keep eating meat. Do you think we should?" asked Niuc hesitantly. "No, I'm sure that Vigilante A is still waiting for us. I think it's better if we go check out what clean jobs Feniro has to offer." Mada was still quite scared of Vigilante A, being that he was quite cruel. Mada had never seen someone like that before in his life. They didn't know each other beforehand, and the three of them have, 1, never attacked innocent women, and 2, never took a life. They only ever acted as Robin Hoods who stole from the rich to aid the poor. Weren't they doing something noble, as the warriors have been doing since ancient times? So why did he have to chase them non-stop? Out of the three of them, it was no doubt that Luo's legs were the strongest. He was just acting as bait to let his brothers escape, but who would have expected that Vigilante A to actually take the bait? Not only that, the whole fiasco had caused Luo to be arrested and shipped off for rehabilitation by those goons from the Special Affairs Department, who had been following Vigilante A the whole time. With no idea what torture was going through, they could only hope that this leather box would provide a bit of comfort. Mada wasn't the leader of the three of them just because he could be. He was stronger than Luo in his aspirations and experience. The Vigilante he had mentioned, which was also the system, was still farming mobs to earn experience points, so it would make sense that he would be waiting for Mada and Niuc. With how Vigilante A could only farm common criminals despite the large amount of experience points he needed, Mada and Niuc's reappearance was his best bet, as most of the other awakened individuals that he had defeated again and again were all laying low. As compared with the system's hard work and dedication, Fang Ning himself was still spending his days playing video games in the system's cyber cafe. Right after he had finished farming a boss, a QQ notification popped up on his computer. To a homebody like him, phone calls were his worst enemy, and the only person that he would pick up a call from would never be calling him again. "President Fang, where are you earning money now?" This was a message from a good friend on QQ that rarely messaged him, President Zhao of Key City's Xingsheng Group, who was a foodie and also one of the franchisees of his restaurant chain. Fang Ning glanced at his resource management online. The boss that had exploded a while ago gave him 3,000 worth of weapons that he could sell, so Fang Ning simply typed a reply, "I found a good opportunity, President Zhao." Managed to earn 3,000 in a minute. "Congratulations, seems like a good place," answered the other in a dismissive reply, before they sent another message that conveyed their real reason behind the conversation. Fang Ning. Recently, the oldest son of the Qi family sent out a massive invitation to all the influencers in the city. He apparently has a miracle medicine that can prolong your life, heal all your ailments and strengthen your body. He's inviting all of us to the exhibition. They were afraid that you would miss the invite and wouldn't attend, so they had asked me to present you the invitation personally. If it was something else, Fang Ning would have probably rejected it. He was busy with playing video games and reading novels, so he didn't have the time to mingle with the upper class at some banquet. There were some of the invitees that made Fang Ning seriously consider going, however, but the system would never allow such a long relief time. However, Fang Ning had to attend the exhibition. It would be easy looking for a reason to bluff the system anyways. He could just tell the system that he would attend the exhibition to prepare for the celestial weapons revelation. If the Qi family's miracle medicine really worked, Fang Ning would buy a few pills, just in case. Without even taking into consideration other aspects, it would be important for him too. What if they needed emergency care after being fatally wounded? The system would definitely agree to spending the money on such an item. Fang Ning would find out, however, that the system had considered more aspects than he had expected, to avoid any more actions that would curb whatever what-ifs that would come up. End of part 1. Novels Hall Dynasty.